Well, hello, kits and cubs, and welcome to episode number 2 of the True North Eager Beaver Alberta election special, or pre election special, as we can say. Today, recording day is Saturday, April 15th, 2023, and it is an absolutely phenomenally gorgeous day here at the Beaver Lodge, with temperatures hitting above 20 for April, which is a little disturbing, but hey, we'll take it today, even though it does mean some pretty bad stuff is coming, probably. I'm your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver, eh? And, well, not with me at the moment, but coming very soon will be my constant companion, my dear friend, Mr. Grizzly. He's on his way, just making sure he's getting home at the moment. He's getting home from his Scotch and Cigar Club social, as you all know. Yes. But we have some guests here. Returning this week from the Breakdown, Alberta, Nate Pike, and joining us for the first time from the National Observer, Max Fawcett. And welcome. Thank you very much, guys, for coming. Of course,
Happy to be here.
Yeah. A big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, The Peppermaster, The Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and CanadianTarot.com. And I normally ask Mr. Grizzly this, but I will ask you two. How are you doing, and how's your mental health today?
I'm great. Today's my first day off after 4 days of working, so I have a little bit of time. It's nice weather out here in sunny Calgary and sunny Alberta, and I'm having fun. I'm looking forward to this.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah, I would say it's not as nice as the 20 that you talked about here in Calgary. It's like I think 12 or 13, but we'll take it. There's no snow on the ground. All things are looking up, and I think my mental health is pretty good, all things considered. The next few weeks will probably do damage to it, but hoping to start from a high level here.
All right. Wow. There has been a lot over I don't know if the last 2 weeks was just busier than normal or picked up in speed, but there seemed to be. I listened to a couple of your shows, Nate, and I've been reading your columns, Max, and holy canna. The first thing I know about this week, probably the thing that stands out, is that Premier Danielle Smith suddenly had a creative new reason for which she did not notice at some point during those 11 minutes on that phone call that it was maybe not a good phone call because she thought that she was talking to someone in a specific capacity.
Well, that's the story that she gave. I mean, but that's like, I don't know, the 19th story or something that she's given in regards to why she had that phone call, what the motivations were. The bottom line is because she has been so mercurial with her explanations as to why she took that phone call. I think anybody who's followed Danielle Smith for any length of time, anybody who's followed her commentary on Arthur and the health measures that were in place during the pandemic, I think everybody knows why Danielle Smith took that phone call. I don't think that there's anybody who's like, well, mate, sure, it's plausible that she was just taking a phone call with another leader, because she hasn't done that with any other leaders, really.
Yes.
So I don't think anyone buys it, but it's just another example of the ongoing evolution of the Smith show, and that came to a thudding conclusion at a press conference early this week.
Yeah, disastrous one. I heard the clip on your show and was like, oh, geez, ouch.
Well, I mean, there was the picture that will define this election, I think, in a lot of regards. I mean, so far, who knows what else is coming down the pipe? It is Alberta politics, and it's never a dull moment. But the picture that came out of the press conference where Danielle Smith, it's just, you can't even say it with a straight face. She made her healthcare guarantee not dissimilar to the healthcare guarantee that the previous Premier Jason Kenney made, standing in front of a private for-profit diagnostic imaging facility. And the picture that came out of that, which a lot of people are saying is going to define the election, was the picture of the healthcare worker who was using a very particular hand gesture to express her thoughts on the things and the stuff, let's say.
Yes, indeed. She was giving a little interesting sign language, and she knew what she was doing because she had her pass flipped over.
Well, and there's more than one picture.
Okay.
Yeah, it was not a mistake by any stretch of the imagination.
No, not at all.
But it's,
So,
I mean, the defining thing for me so far has been, I think there's a lot of conservatives in Calgary who really would just like to be able to vote conservative, and Danielle Smith just keeps giving them reasons why they can't do that. Like if she would just be quiet and talk about tax cuts and talk about jobs and things like that, I think she would be okay. But she keeps relitigating things that she really shouldn't, and keeps reminding people of who she really is. And I think at some point there's going to be a lot of sort of, old red Tories or progressive conservatives who would really like to be able to vote for her, but will simply either not vote at all or maybe even vote NDP this one election, because she cannot help but remind people of the person she really is, and not the person that they're trying to present her as. Now we find out that she's going to restrict questions at press conferences to one question per reporter, no follow-ups, because they don't trust her to stay on message. But she is her own worst enemy on that front, and limiting her questions at press conferences is not going to change that.
Well, I mean, to Max's point, I just want to jump in here real quick because there was a fascinating little, I'm going to call it a development. The check's kind of been in the mail for a while, but even just today, the former deputy premier for the province of Alberta under the PCs, Thomas Lukasik, has been somebody who has been saying some very positive things about Rachel Notley and the NDP over the last couple of weeks and months, particularly since Smith got in and it's turned into the raging dumpster fire that it is. Lukasik announced on social media today that not only is he continuing to support Rachel Notley, he's actually out door knocking for the NDP today. So you have the former deputy premier under the PCs saying Smith is such a dumpster fire. The UCP have moved so far away from the traditional conservative values here in Alberta. I'm not only supporting the NDP, I'm actively campaigning for them. And so when, with Max's point about old Tories looking for how are we going to handle this election, it's not a small thing.
Yeah. Mr. Grizzly, if you would, I think I have some visual from Nate's show of that disastrous moment that Danielle Smith had, actually. And this might be part of the reasons for which that she is not taking more than one question.
Frightening to think about what Rachel Notley and the NDP would do in government, or, quite frankly, what they would not do if given the chance. Let me be clear. The NDP has absolutely no plan whatsoever to address crime and disorders in community across Alberta. But worse, the NDP candidate's comments suggest resentment towards law enforcement and our justice system.
Oops, I'm sorry. That was the wrong clip.
I mean, that's a fun one too.
Clearly, but that's a fun one too. Exactly. So let's get into that.
So I just discovered, guys, I can't change the orientation, so we can keep rolling like we are, or if we want to go full screen, I have to stop and restart the stream. It's your decision.
I'm fine like this.
We've started. That's fine.
All right. I feel like this is a really fun episode of the Brady Bunch, so I'm down.
But okay, so what thoughts did you have on that one? Because this one was a doozy as well.
I had two thoughts. I mean, one of them is that it's very interesting that they're not sending the premier to talk about things in Calgary anymore. They've clearly decided that she is not the right messenger for this city, that she is not resonating with people here. And so they sent Rebecca Schultz out, who I think is a much more credible and trusted, in as much as they can be trusted in this government, trusted communicator on this file. And they sent her out with a bunch of ministers to basically spew a bunch of talking points about the NDP. And look, like, I don't think the UCP wants to get into a game of who said what in the past. I think that's a very bad game for them to play, because they're going to lose that one every single time. I mean, there's definitely people within the NDP, Janice Irwin in particular, who have been critical of the police, but their criticism is not, is not intended or is not aimed in a way that suggests that there should be no police or that police funding should be sort of, cut to zero. It's they need to do a better job with the money they're given, and maybe not spend it on building new target shooting facilities and things like that. Like, I think that is a reasonable conversation to have. The unreasonable one that the UCP wants to have is that, they're tough on crime and the NDP is not tough on crime. And I don't think that's going to wash with a lot of people here, because I think people, number one, understand that it's pretty hard to blame the NDP for the state of crime in Calgary when they haven't been the government in 4 years. And the issue with crime is it's happening everywhere. It's happening in the United States. It's happening in Vancouver. It's happening in Toronto. There's something else going on right now that transcends politics. And to try to pin it on Rachel Notley or Janice Irwin or Justin Trudeau is I think a little too oversimplifying, even for them.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was really unexpected that Rebecca Schultz was going to kick off her next leadership campaign so early on before we've even had the election, and Danielle Smith has been consumed by the party. But good for her. It was my big beef with that whole press conference was the rhetoric was way over the top, and B, it really misrepresented and cherry picked quite grotesquely the quotes that were in question. I think one of the problems that exists with this whole conversation, and we tried to get into this a little bit on our show last week, but one of the problems that exists inside this whole conversation is you take a look at Drew Farrell's comments, and there's no question Drew Farrell's comments were definitely more inflammatory than they needed to be. She ended up walking the back. She ended up saying, hey, you know what? I was referring about cops in the States. It wasn't the best, I'll say, comms management in the history of everything. But there's this false dichotomy that the UCP are trying to set up where either you support police 100% and you just think they're the greatest people in the world and that's the be all and end all of the conversation, or you don't. And if you don't, you must be NDP. But the problem is, there is a very real conversation to be had about mental health inside of the first responder and particularly inside of the law enforcement community. There's a very real conversation to be held around questions of domestic violence inside of the first responder and the law enforcement community. And to try to say, if you even try to have that conversation, you're not supporting police, is to me actually the opposite. Because the data that we were able to find on domestic violence inside of law enforcement, the law enforcement community, is that it's crap data to begin with. There's not a whole lot of data available. So that's the first piece that we got to talk about. But the second piece is the data that does exist does seem to indicate that you're looking at like 4 times the incidence of domestic violence inside of law enforcement families. And there's very important reasons for that, and having discussions about that, or rather, sorry, not having the discussions about that is absolutely a disservice to the law enforcement professionals who respond to crime. It's also a disservice to their families. And so it was just a very poorly framed conversation that was disingenuous, that cherry picked quotes, that took them out of context. And I mean, bold choice to say, because the big claim in that whole press conference was, look at what these NDP candidates have said. Yeah, we've got some candidates who have said some other things, like people who have heart attacks need to just nut up and take responsibility for their poor health choices. But look, these NDP candidates have said other things too. But to go after Janice Irwin for using a hashtag and to then say all of these candidates, Rachel Notley should kick all of these candidates out. Like, I can't imagine. I literally can't imagine a circumstance where Janice Irwin would do something that Rachel Notley would find so egregious that she would go, yeah, Janice, see ya. Like, it's just,
yeah,
it was an entirely performative press conference, but like I said, good for Rebecca Schultz for starting her new leadership campaign.
Was she maybe freelancing a little there? Possibly?
I doubt it, just because there were so many other UCP MLAs there at the time. That would be some very aggressive freelancing on her part to gather all those people up and put them on top of a hill and go after the NDP. But I mean, I think as we get into this campaign, if you start to see Danielle Smith, the real Danielle Smith really show herself and the polls maybe start to move more decisively against the UCP, you will absolutely see people positioning themselves that way and saying like, maybe it's time for a different voice at the top, blah, blah, blah. So Rebecca Schultz's name will be at the top of that list because she has fashioned herself, and I think she is a more moderate version of a conservative. I think about Travis Taves and as boring and sort of pedantic as he can be, he would be a much easier leader to run behind in this election than Danielle. Like he would just be talking about the budget. There would be no scandals. There would be no, really no nothing for the NDP to grab onto. And I'd have a hard time seeing how they could win this. But with Danielle, like, all bets are off, and that's what we're seeing.
Okay. See, now when she was mentioning on that call, and I've been looking for the clip all over for some reason. I just cannot find the one where she said like 6 times in a row that she cannot take any questions, which was very disastrous. But as you mentioned, right, she gave that I thought I was on that impression that she thought she was on the call with the leader of the Independence Party of Alberta, and that's because there was such a track record of her having such similar calls with all other leaders of all the other parties, including the parties that actually have seats in the legislature at the moment, which you'd think would be the first ones she would call. And if you go back and listen to that 11-minute conversation, the conversation starts with Dennis Modry?
Yes, Dennis Modry, who does the introduction.
Yeah,
and
does the introduction.
Archer in.
Yeah, and at no point does he introduce him as the leader of a provincial party. At no point in that conversation is there any conversation whatsoever that seems to be about politics in the business of two party leaders dealing with each other. And she is claiming that it took her a whole full 11 minutes plus a couple of weeks for her to realize that it was not a conversation. About the political system.
Come on, like really.
Now I know that Lauren Gunter, who's a very faithful conservative columnist, pro-conservative columnist, has basically said, "Okay, that's it. I'm out. You're insulting our intelligence now."
I mean, in fairness, he'll be back in, at the first opportunity. This is him this is him salting the mine a little bit on his own credibility. But, I think to me that the issue here is, I mean, she's obviously lying about this. There's all these competing explanations. The NDP can't get bogged down in chasing her latest explanation. They need, they don't even really need to get bogged down in the legalities of, did she talk to a prosecutor? Did she not? I don't think that's the issue. The issue is, why was she spending 11 minutes talking to this person who everyone in Calgary knows a lot about? He's a known quantity. He is a very sort of extreme homophobic right-wing person. Why on earth would you be, as the premier, spending, forget about 11 minutes, 1 minute talking to this guy?
I'm trying to wonder how does she even still have a job taking the call with a defendant who has a criminal case in front of the court like 2 weeks or 2 months? Was it 2 weeks before the case is going?
Yep.
There is no planet, dimension, galaxy, solar system, continent, country, postal code, or area code where we're told that that's okay. Like, how does she still have a job?
It's okay in Alberta.
How does she still have a job? Because I heard this guy calling on your show, Nate, asking about like what's the difference between SNC and this, and because you're not federally focused, it's like the SNC was the Prime Minister speaking to the Attorney General or Minister of Justice, depending which hat they were wearing at the time, about a deferred prosecution agreement, which is a legal process that specifically allows people to speak to the Attorney General or like this in cases where a decision against, for example, a corporation like SNC would have impact on people that had nothing to do with the crime. So all the people that would lose their pensions, all the people that would lose their jobs, and it brings a judge in to say, you need to do these things, and if you don't do these things to my satisfaction, well then the trial is going ahead. So it's a law that actually has a mechanism to actually speak with that. And he spoke to her. She spoke to the criminal defendant in the case.
Yeah, it's
obvious how this is wrong.
It's comparing fruit to small engine repair. They're two totally, from everything that I can see, they're two totally different things. To me, what that person who brought that up was trying to do was to say, but look, this person's really bad too. Why aren't you talking about that? And fundamentally, at the end of the day, the difference is, for me, one of those things is done. The other one is still actively unfolding in the province of Alberta. So if you want to have an extended history conversation where we can debate the merits of established record of history, sure. I mean, we can do that. Our show isn't the show for that because we play with provincial politics, but one of these things is still actively unfolding in the province of Alberta. And I think that the other big difference is that when we're talking about the Smith piece, I mean, Trudeau has his ethics issues for sure. And I'm by no means claiming to be an expert on those things or knowledgeable particularly well on those things, because it's just not my sandbox. But there's a question of scale and frequency, I think. Like, the Danielle Smith stuff is all day, every day. Today on her radio show, I had to go back and listen to the clip like 5 times because I was like, there's no way she just said that. But she did. Today on her radio show, she claimed that her chief of staff, who, from all publicly available information, his post-secondary education consists of some sort of forensic science. That's it. That's what he's got. She claimed that he is the foremost, not one of, not really informed, not has some lived experience, but she claimed that he's the foremost expert on mental health and addictions in North America.
Lord.
Period.
What is this with these people with superlatives?
Stretch. Little stretch.
Why lie when the truth will do?
But that's the thing. It doesn't stop with her. And so that's where I think it becomes it should be a greater point of concern for Albertans and for the electorate, because, Justin Trudeau, from my understanding, and I'm going to let Max correct me like hell on this because I'm probably wrong, but from my understanding, when the SNC Lavalin thing happened, the Trudeau government's response was basically, everybody shut up, nobody move. Whereas it seems the Smiths government reaction is to say, light everything on fire.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, I think that's a pretty accurate way of summarizing it. I mean, to get into the SNC stuff, there was definitely overreach by the Prime Minister. They messed up, and the liberal kryptonite is ethics issues. There was a case recently where they had to appoint an interim ethics commissioner, and they ended up appointing someone who was directly related to one of his cabinet ministers. Yeah. They have a blind spot for this. So I'm not here to excuse or sort of minimize those issues, but if Justin Trudeau is the worst person in the world for you, as he seems to be for many Albertans, and the premier does something that's exactly the same as what he did, and according to legal experts, actually quite a bit worse. Shouldn't that matter to you? Like, shouldn't that be disqualifying that she did the same thing? And of course, the answer is, well, she did it for the right reasons, right?
The wrong thing for the right reasons is the greatest treason.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's their excuse, though. As they say, well, it was about the pandemic and these silly pandemic prosecutions, and there's so much overreach on that. So it's okay, and not realizing that, well, no, actually, that's not what it was about. It was about his obstruction of justice, obstruction of the transportation of goods and things at the Coots blockade, where, by the way, he gave a speech where he said that this was going to be their Alamo, and that they should resist the police. Like, if you're pro-police, if that is how you define yourself, this man should be anathema to you. He should be, he should be someone that you revile. And yet they seem to have no problem with the premier spending 11 minutes like catering to him like she's his butler. It just does. There's so many contradictions, and I think one of the things that I've learned over the last decade, but especially watching what Donald Trump did to the Republican Party, is you should not expect intellectual consistency from conservatives. It's not important to them. They're not interested in it. It doesn't matter. And so you can point out the hypocrisy of believing A and then believing B, but it doesn't really matter. And it's, on some level, probably not worth our efforts and our energy to hammer those points home. We should be focusing more on, making our own arguments and telling our own stories.
Okay. So we've got this obvious lie, and then we got another obvious lie where in that press conference she says like about 5 or 6 times she's contemplating putting these things before the court, so she can't talk about them. You actually can't talk about them if they are actually before the courts already. So she's contemplating, they're not before the courts.
Well, you can.
And then she says she can't talk about them, and then a couple of days later she goes on a radio show and then she talks about them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, first of all, you can. If there's something before the courts, there's nothing preventing you from going and saying, yeah, I've been charged with eating ice cream on a Tuesday, and It was a Wednesday. I don't know what they're talking about. There's nothing that prevents a person other than legal advice and the wherewithal to recognize that if you're talking about things that are before the courts, anything that you say becomes part of that whole evidence package. So most lawyers are like, please don't do that. But there's nothing that legally prevents her from doing so. That's an important distinction that I think needs to be highlighted out of the gates. But the second thing is she doesn't stop talking about it. It's not that she's not allowed to talk about it. She will only talk about it on her terms to the audience that she wants. Period. End of sentence. She has no understanding of what the legal requirements are, and we saw that unfold at the same press conference where the healthcare worker was making the gesture because Daniel Smith told reporters when they were asking about it's now turned into there's an ethics investigator or ethics commissioner investigation that's going forward that will result in nothing. Let's be clear. But Daniel Smith came and said, you know what? Why don't you talk to the ethics commissioner? She'll give you all of the details. And it's explicit. Like, she's explicitly not allowed to do that. The ethics commissioner can't even confirm that there's an investigation. So the fact that Smith is like, hey, you should go talk to this person who will give you all of the answers and either knows or doesn't know that this person's not allowed to give them any answers, only again speaks to either she is unbelievably incompetent or just she doesn't care about giving people bad information.
I'm starting to think she's conveniently incompetent.
Well, and she also has talk radio brain, right? Which is a form of thinking that everything is iterative, right? So you have an opinion, someone calls in, you revise your opinion, someone else calls in, you shift it a little bit. Like, everything is sort of a rolling conversation, and that works for talk radio. It is how you engage with people. It also explains why she refuses to, when people float ridiculous ideas, she doesn't go, well, that's a ridiculous idea, you're out of your mind. She has to sort of indulge it, be like, well, okay, that's one way of looking at it. It's a mental frame, and it works for talk radio. It does not work for being the leader of a province or a country or any other sort of political organization, because you need to be consistent. People need to know that what you say is what you believe, and that you're not going to change your mind 5 minutes later. And I think that is going to continue to get her into trouble. This is how her brain works, right? And it's just going to continue to manifest itself over the course of the campaign. That, the person she talked to most recently is going to be the person who she listens to the most. Donald Trump had the exact same thing. And I think if the NDs can kind of push her in that direction a little bit, I think it will kind of expose a leadership style that Albertans aren't interested in. I mean, say what you will about Jason Kenney, and I've said a lot of bad things about him, but the man was consistent. He stayed on a message. He was very clear about what he believed, and you couldn't really push him on that. And she's completely different in that respect.
Well, I think one of the big differences with Kenney as well is that he was very, very good at manipulating the rules. He was very, very good at finding loopholes. He was very, very good at understanding how the systems worked and how he could bend the systems to accomplish the things that he wanted to, or he understood how to change the systems in order to accomplish the things that he wanted to. He understood what the rules of engagement were. Daniel Smith doesn't have any understanding of any of those things, and by any objective measure, she doesn't appear to want to, and that makes her not only a much more dangerous commodity or quantity for the province of Alberta, but as we saw with the decision to restrict questions this week to only one question, no follow-ups, which was, by the way, and I love this part, because if you watch the press conference, there's an Alberta journalist named Safe Kaiser who did a very, very good job of saying, before I ask my question, could you just confirm this detail? And Smith was like, sure, absolutely. And she was ready to go ahead and answer the question that he had posed after that. And it was actually her press secretary who came in and said, nope, next question. So it's very, very clear that this is not Danielle Smith who's wanting to shut down the conversation. I'm sure she is in some areas. It is her advisors and her handlers who have finally realized, holy hell, we've got to get some control under her, because if she doesn't have a script, we're all staying up till midnight.
Yeah, bit of a loose cannon, to say the least, right? Whereas I think with on the other side of that coin, Rachel Notley is better when she's off script.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When you're, how would I put it? I have a problem personally because, like we say on our show, democracy is something that you do. I have a problem with politicians that interfere directly with the public's right to be able to cast an informed vote.
Mm-hmm.
So politicians that don't show up at debates, politicians that hold a debate hostage to get the terms they want. Saying, and I don't understand why debate commissions keep on going, oh, well, the conservatives aren't going to show up, so I guess we won't host a debate. Host the damn debate.
Yeah.
Let them give up their time, their seat.
With them.
But here we got Danielle Smith saying that I will not take more than one question. So you ask a question, she's setting herself up to be asked a question, give whatever answer she wants, and then not being asked to account for it or any follow-up. So she could just say whatever I want, and nobody could say, that didn't make any sense. So unless the journalists are going to get together and to give each other the follow-up questions, which they have not done once in the last freaking 10 years,
mm-hmm.
I do not know why they do not do that. Or just don't come to the damn conference for a couple of weeks.
Well, I think you'd be.
Everybody's so afraid of getting scooped that it's just like, just hold.
I think you'll be surprised. With Trump, because they sort of tried to roll the press this way in similar ways, and the press gallery there kind of ganged up and worked with each other. And there is a tightness in the Alberta press gallery that I think will show itself. Maybe Ontario is different, the federal ones may be different, but I do think they're going to build on each other's questions where they can, because I think a lot of their questions are going to be so similar. And there's, I think just instinctively, journalists do not like being told that they cannot ask more than one question. It seems like conservatives in this country are trying to piss off every journalist that is working professionally, that doesn't work for Postmedia. I mean, you look at Pierre Poilievre the other day. He, took a swipe at the Canadian Press, which is, the most nonpartisan, apolitical group of reporters you'll find, and
right.
He seems to be trying to get them in the game. So I don't know what I don't think there's a strategy here other than they just don't like journalists and they don't like people who ask nosy questions. But I get the sense this is going to backfire.
I think there is a strategy. I honestly and sincerely do. And I think what that strategy is, and we're seeing it play out a little bit, Danielle Smith's, I can never get his title, executive director of her office / puppeteer. I mean, whatever the title is, Rob Anderson. He came out today and he continues he's been pushing this narrative for a while where he talks about the mainstream media. So he makes it very clear, as does the press secretary for Danielle Smith, as do other operatives in the UCP government. Their beef is not with journalists, and I'm air quoting the hell out of that, and I'll say why in just a sec. Their beef is with the mainstream media, the state-funded media. What we really need, and Danielle Smith has said this, what we really need is more of the independent media, the new startups, like the True North and the Rebel and the Counter Signal. Those are the people that we really should be paying attention to, because boy, they're doing some great work. And no, they're not.
Yeah.
Period. No, they're not. They're lying all the time. They are cherry picking the stories that they are sharing, and they're representing themselves as journalists. And this is where I take particular beef with them,
right.
Because I recognize that most journalists can't and won't say, well, those guys are full of shit. But they lie. The Counter Signal, Angry Caillou's little outlet there, they manufactured a whole story about climate change police that Justin Trudeau was going to be putting up, that got repeated enough that it made its way all the way to Danielle Smith amplifying it herself. True North, when you peel back the layers of the onion on that, it's an absolute shit show, and it's the connections that go back to Danielle Smith are stunning. So I don't think that they're trying to discredit all journalists. I think what they're very deliberately trying to do is say, hey, the ones who are going to say mean things about us, don't listen to them. They're very bad. But the ones that say nice things about us and don't report on when our candidates say really, really dumb stuff, or get kicked out of caucus, or not get kicked out of caucus, get kicked out of being able to run as a candidate because they said that kindergarten teachers are showing pornography to kindergarten students. They don't report on that stuff. So you should go pay attention to them. And that's where I think there is a very deliberate strategy where conservatives provincially and federally have done an incredibly effective job of building their own media apparatus. The left, not so much.
Yeah, I mean, if you sort of follow the breadcrumbs on, on the True North stuff, and we've covered it a little bit at the Observer, and I think Nate's tweeted about it, or there's lots of stories out there about it, but no one's really been able to put together sort of the definitive take on it. But the connections to the conservative political world are just they're everywhere, and it's really not that hard to see that the fact that they have a charitable status that they essentially captured from this charity that was about integrating immigrants from the UK. It's a whole thing. They're ruthless about it in a way that, like Nate says, the left is just not able to be quite as ruthless. But it is a little bit dispiriting to see this sort of push towards these non-journalistic outlets. I mean, to me, the test has always been, if you were given, as a journalist, if you were given a really, really explosive scoop about the politician you like the most, and let's be clear, all journalists have politicians they like more than other politicians. That's just a fact. Would you report it, or would you give it to them, right? And these right-wing groups, they would not report a story about Danielle Smith. They would not report a story about Pierre Poilievre. They would bury it. And that's the litmus test, right? Whereas I know, like, if you gave us a story about Trudeau or about Notley, we'd report it. If you gave it to Nate, he'd report it, like reluctantly probably, or with some trepidation, but you got to do it.
Over here, we'll let anybody up over here.
Yeah,
we're not journalists, and that's the distinction we make.
That's the thing, right? Yeah. It's like, and we say this all the time too. It's like, we're not journalists. We curate the news. We comment on the news like this, but we don't develop news. We had people send us stuff saying, "Hey, would you look into this?" And we had to remind people, there's justice too. It's not like we got an investigative unit here.
Yeah. Right? We're just journalists.
But what's happening? It's almost similar. It seems to me that what's happening is it's not so much trying to censor regular news, but trying to flatten everything out. So it's like everything's equivalent. True North is just as good or just as bad as CBC is. The level of journalism is the same. So it's like, you don't need to go to CBC. You can go to direct you over there. It seems that by trying to elevate independent thought people like us to the level of journalists, equivalent to people who have done journalism school and follow a journalistic code of ethics like this, which none of us are obligated to do because we're not journalists. We don't work for an organization that can sanction us. We choose to, right? But we don't have to. We're not obligated. It's not the same thing as Susan Delacourt's obligated to, for example. So it just seems to me, by making it all the same, by describing all these things as being the same, it makes it much easier to direct people towards one and ignore the others because they all have the same value.
No, they're delegitimizing real journalism in Alberta.
Well, yeah, that's how they do it, though.
They're delegitimizing it. It's not that they're leveling the playing field. They are deliberately saying, you should go to outlets like True North. You should go to outlets like The Rebel, because people like the CBC are in bed with the NDP because they're federally funded, and the NDP are subservient to Jagmeet Singh and the liberal NDP coalition empire building exercise, or whatever the narrative of the day is. But they will actively. We even saw this at a press conference like a week and a half ago, when a CBC journalist, who is one of the best journalists in the province as far as I'm concerned, Elise Von Schiele, asked a question of Danielle Smith, and Danielle Smith started her answer with, "Well, actually, Elise, I'm still awaiting an apology for your defamatory story." That's how she answered a question. Like it's not just, hey, maybe you should go check out the independents or the not journalists. It is quite literally, we are going to say True North, they're the best. We're going to give them awards. We're going to give them exclusive access. We're going to give them exclusive interviews. But CBC, CTV, Global, and all journalistic outlets make mistakes, but the hallmark of a journalistic outlet, to me at least, is when you make a mistake, you go, okay, we made a mistake. Here's what the mistake was. Sorry about that. Moving on.
Right.
The failure to do that, or the failure to identify any bias, if it's an editorial column or something like that, that's where it gets to be really, really problematic. But I'm sorry if I'm coming off a little bit strong here, but I really, really strongly believe that, and you were kind of alluding it to yourself earlier, the foundation of any functional democracy is a well-informed electorate, and there is a deliberate effort being put in to delegitimize the people who can inform the electorate accurately and fairly, and replace it, not just elevate others, but replace it with these partisan hacks who are abusing charities in order to get rich. I mean, we did a whole we do commentary, we do satire. If you want to check out just how sketchy True North actually is, our pinned tweet is 30 minutes, including what I like to think is a very punchy little sketch in the middle. Where we go through the whole history of True North, the whole history of who these main actors are. And of course, the cherry on the top of the whole thing is that it just came out last week that the main reporter on Alberta politics for True North is married to the main guy for Take Back Alberta, and they're coordinating messaging. Like, this is where we are.
Yeah.
Ryan Lilly must be so proud.
Well, Max, you spoke about this the other day on Dean's show about how, let's face it, when they go, well, the CBC is state funded. Well, aren't all news agencies in Canada state funded? To that respect, they all get money. So
yeah, I mean, the CBC is obviously the most state funded, but people throw this in our face all the time that, we take subsidies from the government. So we're what do they call it? Trudeau journalists, Justin journalists.
Right.
And guess what? Post Media gets the biggest bag of loot in the country.
Right.
They're the ones who take down the biggest amount of government funding of the sort of, private media companies. No one seems to have a problem with that because I guess they're critical of the federal government. But, like it sort of speaks to the fact that just getting funding doesn't change your coverage. It underpins the fact that you were able to do coverage, but what you choose to do with that is sort of up to you. And the other detail about True North that I know Nate gets into in his video is they're government funded too, because they're a charity. Guess what? Right. All the donations that are being made there and then being given a charitable tax credit, that's government money going to them. So they're no better in a lot of respects than anyone else. But it's all meant. I think you're right about there being sort of an attempt to create a false equivalency. That the CBC or the Globe and Mail is the same as True North, and if they can get those closer together, that's a win for them, right? Because then people can go, well, Globe and Mail said this, True North said that. I don't know who to believe. What are you going to do, right? And that is sort of what they're aiming for. There's a really interesting poll by Ecos recently that sort of asked people questions about known conspiracy theories. So COVID related, 9/11, a bunch of things that have very clear yes, no answers, and sorted people by how they, I think they called it like prone to misinformation. But the long and the short of it was that the people who answered all the questions correctly voted Liberal or NDP, with a tiny amount that voted Conservative. And the people who got all the conspiracy theory questions wrong vote Conservative. So there's a clear correlation between believing things that are demonstrably not true, believing conspiracy theories, and voting Conservative. And so they have a vested interest in destroying institutions that can inform the public and keep them within the bounds of a fact-based universe. And that should be very troubling for everyone. I mean, I want the Conservative Party of Canada. I want provincial Conservative parties to be places where facts matter and where conspiracies don't thrive. And that is not the case right now.
Yeah, it's really troublesome when I see what how journalistic integrity has been thrown out the window by these. Well, again, they're not journalists, right? They say they are. They like to pretend that they are, but they aren't. So they have no code of ethics to follow, and they've tossed any sort of balanced coverage completely out the window, and will only cover what they see is beneficial to the candidate that they support. That's not democracy. That's that's employing the Finkelstein method, is it not? Correct me if I'm wrong. Are you familiar with the Finkelstein method? I'll put a link to it in the chat right here. You can learn all about it. It's very underhanded. It borderlines on a fascist approach to getting a government elected and keeping them in power by, doing the 14 steps of fascism. Steps 14. What were the 14 signs of fascism? Characteristics. Thank you. I'm struggling for words here. I was out in the sun for a little bit, so I'm a little bit dehydrated. I need some water.
Yeah, for anybody who doesn't know what the Finkelstein method is, it says it's a method that reads like a how-to guide for modern right-wing populists. The method states that every election is decided before it even begins, and that numerous war crimes were committed by both parties, but particularly whichever one, your rival at the time. In the case where the original case for the Finkelstein, it was particularly Israel during Operations Cast Lead in Gaza. That's the original, but then you just take that out and substitute that with whatever variables you need to attack whatever your, whoever your rival of the day is. And then Finkelstein leaves no stone unturned in this searing indictment of both parties of the conflict. So you just,
it's a scorched earth policy, basically. The other side is bad and evil, and we do nothing wrong. But we saw you do this. No, that never happened, as evidenced by what Daniel Smith did. Well, the phone call, it wasn't what you thought it was, but I listened to it.
And it's interesting. Don Braid, who is a probably sort of the most esteemed columnist in Alberta by virtue of his longevity at the Calgary Herald, and he's written some fairly lousy columns lately about the UCP, but he wrote this one about their healthcare pledge, sort of saying, like, basically, who are you going to trust, her or your lying eyes, right? Because she's gone chapter and verse on her faith in private healthcare. She wrote a whole paper about it that's publicly available that she published with the University of Calgary, saying we need to bring more private activity into the system. We need to get people used to paying for things for their healthcare. And now she's coming out and saying, well, I'll never make you do that ever, ever, ever. It really is sort of almost a test of Albertans. Like, who do they have the ability, the wherewithal to trust their own senses, right? They know what she said about this stuff. Are they going to buy this sort of phony pledge that she did at a private healthcare facility? It's almost like she's gaslighting them. She's daring them to to trust their own senses. It would be fascinating if I didn't live here. And I didn't have as much at stake,
Well, it's interesting. Like, and to your point, Max, again, I spent my morning going through her. Thank God. Can we just say thank God? It's the last your province, your premier until after the election, God willing. Like, oh, thank goodness for that. But she was asked point blank a question on the radio show today, where the question was, yes or no, do you support having user fees for healthcare? Yes or no? That's all I want to hear. Please don't gaslight. Please don't give a long-winded bullshit answer. Yes or no? And of course, she gave a gaslighting, long-winded bullshit answer. But she refused to say. She said, you know what? I stand by the policies of the UCP, and there's no policies that call for private fees. Factually wrong. There actually are. They're in their current policy book. She said that no UCP MLAs or ministers want to bring in any kind of user fees. Again, factually wrong. And she refused to state her personal position, which to any critical thinker, to any objective observer, you'd go, wait a second, you were asked a yes or no question. And you could have said yes or no and then expanded on your answer and provided some color and some context. But that's not what you did. What you did was you said a bunch of words that didn't address the core of the question. And several of the statements that you made were demonstrably false. So It really does become it is a willful, conscious choice at this point to look at Danielle Smith's position on healthcare, position on private healthcare, position on user fees, and go, no, it'll be fine.
Oh man, you guys are living in a really bad timeline.
Yeah,
We're upside down.
We've got it bad here in Ontario under Doug Ford, but I'm genuinely concerned for Albertans. I'm genuinely worried about the future for that province and the citizens who live there. I have family in Alberta, and some of them are freaking the hell out right now because they're I don't know what's going to happen.
I wish we were being hyperbolic. Like, I wish that we were talking about things and like, we love to do satire at this show, and it's getting harder and harder because reality is getting so messed up.
Right.
Like, how do you do a bit? How do you do a sketch on a premier who lies when the next thing that she does is she lies?
Yeah.
Like, how do you do that bit without just I don't know how to make it funny anymore. Like,
well, it's
occasionally
like
there's bits, but
they're
like,
going to
it's
put the
really
Beaver out of business because truth is stranger than fiction in this case. It's like, you got comedy writers who are going, this is gold, and now they're like, okay, we can't even make it up anymore. It's so absurdly ridiculous.
Look at the Tylenol. The
Yeah.
children's Tylenol. I mean, like, that is when you start with Danielle Smith is going to pay a company that has never made this medication in this formulation before. She's going to pay them $80 million to do it. Then she's going to try to send the surplus, sell the surplus to other jurisdictions. But oh, wait, we forgot the childproof caps. Oh, wait, we forgot the labels. And oh, by the way, the company is run by Dr. Oz's mom. Like,
jeez,
you can't even make it up anymore.
No.
Well, and you were talking about that what was like the province is something like $80 million in the hole, and they actually had to budget $10 million for wastage.
For disposal.
And now they can't. Now it's not only that they can't sell them, but now they're ordering the hospitals to use them with a different formulation, which then opens the door to medication errors. Now, of course, it's Tylenol, so the margin of safety is pretty large, but still. Again,
I mean, it's a great
staff, and you have nurses. Okay, this one got the regular dose. This one did. Oh, we have to add this one. Oh, which one did he get again? It's like, really? Do you want to be adding that time when people are understaffed?
But it's a great metaphor for her approach to governing it, and she does have this in common with Jason Kenney because they start at the position of fuck Trudeau and they work backwards from that. Right? Everything starts at that frame of fuck Ottawa, fuck Trudeau, fuck the Liberals. And then how do we work backwards to develop some sort of policy that achieves that, right? So the medication thing was all an attempt to show that she was standing up for Albertans the way that the feds weren't, regardless of the fact that the feds had already announced shipments. You know, they have much better procurement channels than obviously the province does. Like, it was just so obvious at the time that it was a $70 million middle finger. And the problem is that in Alberta, a lot of people are happy to pay that. They really, it really kind of annihilates any other policy conversation that you're trying to have. And I know this is hard for a lot of Albertans to contemplate, but like, Justin Trudeau has been a better prime minister for Alberta than Stephen Harper was. I know that's like really hard for people to digest, but like, he's spent more money, he's done more things, he's achieved more of their outcomes. Like, it really is the just sort of alternate universe that they live in. And the thing that worries me about this election is that, like, it's not one thing, there's so many things, but it's not just sort of like they're going to make policy choices that a future government could reverse, if they make bad choices about tax policy or what have you. It's that if they don't get the sort of energy transition stuff that's happening right now, it's gonna damage us for 40 years, right? Like, if we get behind the 8 ball on this stuff, and in the next 4 years are really kind of, what do they say, nut cutting time for this stuff. If we don't get it right, we're going to spend the next 40 years cleaning up the mess. And I still have not seen the NDP make that case, because I think they're afraid of talking about energy, they're afraid of talking about climate, and they're afraid of talking about the economy. But like, those are the stakes: is get this election wrong and your grandkids are going to be paying for it. And I'm not sure that a lot of people understand that yet.
Well, what you're saying, Max, really resonates because when you say that Trudeau was a better PM for Alberta than was Stephen Harper, we also have to remember the context that for a while, Alberta had the most pro-oil conservative premier, probably in history, with the most pro-oil conservative prime minister in history. They changed environmental laws. They declassified waterways. They did everything that they could, and they couldn't get 1 inch of pipeline to Tidewater built. I mean, that's and they couldn't turn a profit when oil was $140 a barrel either. They ran a deficit during that year as well. And when we're negotiating CETA, the free trade deal with Europe, it got snagged at the end because of things having to do with emissions. They were worried or concerned that the oil from Alberta wouldn't meet environmental standards and therefore would not be able to be sold in Europe. Now, it's like I don't. This is a conversation I don't hear in Alberta very much. That if we're not going to really be serious about decarbonizing what it is that we do, at least even in intensity, at some point there's going to be no place to sell what it is that you can pull out of the ground. Nobody will buy it.
That's not
somebody else will provide a cleaner option. And then you're going to get trade agreements that are going to forbid the sale. Then you're going to be limiting the number of countries, which means you do not get the best price.
I'll be honest with you, they don't believe that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that simply they don't. The idea that the global economy is reorienting around cleaner sources of energy, that eventually oil will be sort of priced on at least some aspect of carbon emissions. They think that's made up, right? They don't believe it. And you're kind of banging your head against a wall trying to show them that they're wrong. It is frustrating, but there is this real and it's a disconnect that has been sowed by years of conservative politicians here and the conservative media, just sort of riling people up and saying, look, if we just got this Trudeau guy out of the way, everything would be great again. Everything would be like it was before. And that's not how it works. And I always try to remind these folks, I say, well, okay, let's go take a look at a place called Texas. How did it do from 2016 to 2020? They had a Republican governor, they had a president, Donald Trump, and oh look, spending on oil and gas went down, jobs went down. It's almost like this is about a global market, not about sort of local political conditions. But that's what they hold on to, that if they just clear Trudeau out, everything will be it'll be the gravy train all over again. And I would prefer that we not find out the hard way.
Well, one of the things that I have to comment on here, just give me a sec, is that I have asked longtime conservative supporters here in Ottawa and friends who support other political parties, and I said, please, I know you hate Trudeau, but can you tell me why? Put your finger on why. Well, he's made my life worse. How is that exactly? Well, oh, that's right. You can't come up with a reason. You just hate him because he's him. I'm like, most of his policies have improved lives for Canadians coast to coast. Case in point, Alberta was the biggest recipient of CERB payments out of all the provinces in Canada. He has done more for the province of Alberta than Stephen Harper did, and Harper is from Alberta. So they just hate him because of his name? Because he's a good-looking, charming fellow? I don't know what it is. I can't quite put my finger on it, but it troubles me that nobody has ever been able to give me... Oh, they did use, of course, the excuse of, well, the lockdowns. We never had a lockdown, number one. The mandates, those were provincial. I remember yelling at people in the street about that. The mandates were all provincial. All public health were all provincially implemented. The only thing that was done federally was the border. And that was done in conjunction with the United States of American President Trump at the time. So again, nobody has been able to give me a concrete reason as to why he is so terrible. They just hate him because they hate him.
It's really simple. That's the key, is that it's really simple. I want to know why I can't afford my Sea-Doo anymore. And the first person who gives me a reason, and that reason is simple, that's the one I'm going to latch onto. So the reality is we're dealing with global economies, we're dealing with economies of scale, we're dealing with major shifts, we're dealing with all of these things, and that's a long time to explain. But if you have leaders, which we do, We had it with Jason Kenney. He didn't run against Rachel Notley so much as he ran against Trudeau, and that's exactly the same formula that Danielle Smith is trying to replicate if she can just get out of her own way for 30 seconds. But if I'm pissed off because my quality of life, I don't care that my quality of life is higher than pretty much everybody else in the country. I don't care. My quality of life is less. I'm unhappy about that. Who do I blame? Blame that guy. Okay, I'm blaming that guy. And now it's really hard for me to change my position, because if I do, not only has my quality of life arguably not improved, but now I have to admit that I'm wrong too.
I mean, one thing I will say about the Prime Minister is he has some hateable characteristics. I'm not going to lie to you. You know, like he is obnoxiously handsome. He, you know, has been gifted this last name that, you know, let's be honest, if his name was Justin Johnson, he wouldn't be the Prime Minister. And I think there's something about that really kind of sticks in people's craws. And he's not the kind of politician that tends to do well in Alberta. You know, like, we like politicians here that have a little more contact with the ground, whether it's, you know, Ralph Klein, whether it's Rachel Notley, who, you know, salt of the earth, is about as Albertan as you can get. That was always why I thought Jason Kenney was an odd fit, because, you know, Jason Kenney is the most elitist of all elitists. You know, like, that man is the definition of a Laurentian elite.
He had a truck.
Oh, he had a truck. He did have a truck. That's true.
Yeah, but he couldn't fill it up. Remember when he tried?
He didn't know how to pump gas in it.
Not to pump gas. That's how elite he is.
Exactly. But you know, Trudeau has that vibe, so I get it. And, you know, you layer on the stuff with his dad, with the National Energy Program. A lot of people out here were raised to hate Trudeau's because of, rightly or wrongly, what they correlated, you know, the change in their circumstances with policy choices he made. So he's sort of like, you know, the perfect person for Albertans to hate. But the degree to which it becomes a core of people's identity is really unhealthy. I just, you know, I don't think it's constructive for anyone. You know, as much as I dislike Danielle Smith, like, I don't hate her. You know, she just has a different worldview than I do, and believes different things. So, you know, I struggle with the Trudeau thing just because I think it makes it difficult to have the conversations we need to have right now about a lot of stuff, because people are so blinded by that name and that face that they can't really get past it and onto the more substantive issues. And then, of course, the Conservatives are all too happy to just keep sort of poking that scratching that itch, keep poking that part of our brain.
We've built a brand around it, though, in this province. We have built a brand and an identity around like, I don't know when exactly it was, oil and gas became the core defining characteristic. But the other piece of it is that we have built an identity in Alberta that is extraordinarily clearly defined. You take a look at the research that Dr. Jared Wesley has done with the Common Ground Initiative and the other folks involved in that, and it's fucking heartbreaking. Because if you ask people who are not white dudes with a cowboy hat, what does an Albertan look like? The answer is never me. Regardless of how many generations these people have lived in the province, regardless of whether or not their kids have been born and raised in the province, the answer is Joe, the white dude with the cowboy hat.
And the pickup truck. And no, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Literally what the brand of Alberta has been defined as. And if we ever want to address some of the bigger issues that we have to address in order to move forward from that brand, which is toxic, then we have to figure out how we're going to undo that, because it is self-reinforcing, and it is, until we embrace, like, to me, it's mind-blowing and heartbreaking that anybody would say, I've lived in this province for my entire life, but if I was to define an Albertan, I'm not that, because by nature of nothing more than predominantly the color of my skin. That's fucked.
Oh yeah, I agree. I completely agree.
Max, I wanted to ask you about that because I had listened to some stuff about that survey as well, and I know that you have to go soon. But the one thing that was interesting about that study is that they were showing up until the age of 12, 16, I think it was, that when they were asking kids to draw what an Albertan would look like, you'd get men and women and people of diversity and all that kind of stuff. But as soon as you got people 16 and over, I think it was always just a white man.
Yeah, I mean, I think the disparity between the reality of what Alberta is and the culture that kind of enforces these standards and norms and ways of thinking, it is a bit of a tragedy because I have a lot of conversations with folks back east, friends of mine in Toronto or friends in Vancouver where I grew up, and they're like, "Why are you living in Calgary? Like, it seems so not like you." And I'm like, "Well, you don't understand. When you actually live here and get underneath sort of the cultural air, like it's very progressive in a lot of respects. People are welcoming, people are warm, it's diverse. I always joke to my friends in Toronto, I'm like, you let me know when you elect a Muslim mayor, and then look at your mayors. They're all varying versions of incompetent white guys.
Yeah.
We do pretty well here when you get to the level of politics where these sort of self-reinforcing identity issues are stripped away. Municipal politics, people can't sort of revert to that, like, well, I must be conservative, so I must vote blue. They just go, well, who do I like the most? Oh, I like Nahid Denshi. Oh, I like, Amarjeet Sohi. Oh, I like, like whoever it is. They stand on their own merits. And yeah, I mean, Professor Wesley's work is really good for sort of exposing that gulf between who we are and who we think we are, who we're told we are. And it is a useful tool for conservatives. It helps keep us in line. It helps sort of create a kind of allegiance and loyalty. And yeah, if you're a person who doesn't look like a white guy in a cowboy hat, it must be awful to live in a place and not feel like you are an Albertan. That in order to belong, you have to sort of dress up in cosplay and look a certain way. So I think 4 years of an NDP government would go a long way towards helping shift that a little bit. I think the first 4 years helped a little bit on that front in terms of normalizing the fact that conservatives don't always govern here, and it's not always people who look a certain way who are in charge. But we obviously have more work to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, I remember a friend of mine who was running federally as a conservative in the province of Alberta a few elections ago, and she was going around knocking on doors, and she told me point blank when she said, "Yeah, I'm running from the Conservative," and they go, "Oh, we hate that," and she goes, "No, federal." They go, "Oh, well, that's different." There was, because provincially people were tired of the lies, the out and out bullshit from the Conservative Party. Now you've got the UCP, which was, I guess, the Wild Rose. Well, Daniel Smith, it's complex and convoluted, but it's still conservative by another name. And she was surprised to find out that there was a lot of hatred towards the Conservative Party in the province at the time. And I'm like, well, 40 plus years, and what's that gotten you? And that was the take she was getting from the populace was, no, we need a change in this province. And of course, NDP got elected, which was a shock to everybody in the rest of Canada. I mean, I was shocked. I never thought I would see that, knowing full well that Calgary is a very progressive city, as evidenced by back-to-back-to-back elections of Nahid Denshi. Thank you. Who was probably Canada's greatest mayor for his entire tenure. And an incorruptible man at the same time. They tried to corrupt him. They tried to bribe him, and he was, nope, he would have no part of that. So to say that Alberta is not progressive is wrong. I don't believe that for a second. I think it's a very progressive province. It's just you've got certain people in positions of powers that want to rule the roost from this conservative standpoint, and it's a lot of crap.
Yeah. Max, I know you have to go soon, but is there anything with which you'd like to leave the kits and Cubs before you go?
Well, one more thing on this issue. I think it's a very interesting one. There was an op-ed written in, I think, the National Post today, I want to say, basically saying, Albertans, you should elect Danielle Smith. She's awesome. It was written by a guy named Michael Taub, who I believe lives in Toronto. He definitely doesn't live in Alberta. And he had this line about how, Alberta used to be reliably conservative, and then people started moving there from other countries and other parts of Canada, and now it's not reliably conservative anymore. And then he clearly sensed that was not the thing he should have said. And so he had a line in his column saying that's not necessarily a bad thing, but he clearly believed that it was a bad thing. But that is a thing that is here. That is a belief that is in the water. That the true Albertans are not the ones who have come here lately or who come here from different places. And I moved here in 2010. My partner moved here in 2010. Lots of people have moved here over the last 20 years. We are just as Albertan as someone who's been here for 3 generations. The only true Albertans are the Indigenous people who were here before we showed up. They are the true Albertans. Everyone else can fuck off. And I find that narrative so aggravating that you sort of weigh people's Albertanness by the amount of time they've been in the province. Because when I was living in Ontario, people didn't do that. They didn't say, "Well, I'm a 7th generation Ontarian." Like, who cares?
No,
like you're just here. You live here. Great. Your opinion is as important as mine. And we really need to get to that spot in Alberta where we're not sort of weighing people by the amount of time they've had boots on the ground.
Yeah, completely agree.
I completely agree. Max, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Have a great rest of the weekend.
Look forward to doing it again.
Absolutely.
Happy to have you back anytime you want.
All right.
Yep. All right.
See you.
All right. So Kids and Cubs, that was Max Fawcett from the National Observer. Usually offers us a lot of substance. So make some time to check out what it is that he wants. Pardon, Paul?
Good fella and a great writer.
Yeah. Okay, Nate. I have literally been looking since we started this for the clip of Danielle repeating that 6 times. I can find it nowhere on the web.
Has it been
There's no news channel that has live coverage of that or even a clip of that press conference anywhere.
So they've scrubbed the web of her gaffe. Is that what it is?
I've been to CTV, CBC, YouTube, website, news articles. I cannot find CPAC. I cannot find
the clip. Did you put it in the Googler?
Yeah.
Well, if it's not in the Googler,
this is the one where she read her statement on the defamation suit, and then the reporters all said, "Well, what about this? And what about this? And what about this?" Is that the one you're looking for?
Yeah, and she kept on saying the same thing. And this here is the statement. I've been able to find this statement talked about on CBC News the National, but no clip of her actually saying it. Mr. Grizzly, if you would put it up, please.
Check your inbox.
Second.
There you go. Okay, that's a weird visual.
Let's take that down.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, it doesn't work because we've got the vertical framing. But it just says, the Premier welcomes this investigation, is fully cooperating with the Commissioner, and is confident this examination will confirm there has been no such interference. And Nate tells me to check my inbox. So I will do that.
I think that might be the clip that you're looking for. But again, like, one of the problems that exists is that because there is this constant fire hose of Danielle Smith saying stunningly ridiculous stuff, they've done an excellent job of hiding a needle inside of a needle stack.
Yeah. That's one way to put it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
There is a bit of hiding this stuff in plain sight here.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Can I just piggyback on one thing that Max was saying there? Because this was a thing that I found frustrating, because one of the things that we try to do here at the Breakdown is we try to find, rather than break news ourselves, because we're not journalists, one of the things that we try to do is we try to find news articles that cite things that happen so that we can then pontificate on them and make jokes. And there was a press conference that happened earlier this week. There's a First Nations called the Onion Lake Cree Nation. They've been one of the First Nations that's part of the one of the treaties that overlaps both Saskatchewan and Alberta. And when Danielle Smith passed her Alberta Sovereignty Act, they filed legal papers saying, hey, there was no consultation that happened, and this actually violates our treaties, which are with the Crown. And that got a little bit of coverage.
Yep.
But they had a press conference this week where they said, okay, so Saskatchewan did it too, so we're going to come after them as well. And there has been almost no press coverage of that. The only conversation that happened in Alberta in regards to any sort of First Nations and Indigenous issues on the provincial politics scale came out of the comments that one of the federal ministers made, talking about how they would look into the land transfer.
David Lametti.
Yeah. And all of the Conservatives in Alberta, Danielle Smith in particular, without any sense of irony whatsoever, said, well, they can't do that. You can't just come in and take away somebody's land or their land rights. That's totally unacceptable. Well, that doesn't go. We'll fight that on land, on sea, and in air, because you can't just have people coming in and take away somebody else's rights to land. And there was no awareness of the fact that Onion Lake literally just said, you guys are taking away their treaty rights, but that's okay. And that's part of the fundamental problem that we have in this province is, and the comments, holy hell. One of the fundamental problems that we have in this province, and I would argue this country as well, but I got opinions, is we have done an absolute garbage job of having the conversation of how do we begin to untangle and deal with the relationship between First Nations and Canada, First Nations and the provinces, Indigenous peoples, Métis peoples, all of that. How do we go forward from here? And the knee-jerk when the knee-jerk reaction from politicians and political leaders like Danielle Smith is to make a bullshit claim about Indigenous ancestry, that Indigenous news organizations then have to go, they got to do the investigation and say, okay, there's no evidence for this.
Yep.
And when that same political leader doesn't issue any kind of apology, well, that's what I was told. When that's their reaction, and when Indigenous and First Nations people and when treaty signatories say, hey, what you're doing here isn't cool, when the reaction from the political leaders is, we'll deal with it, we have a very, very real problem. And that goes to the core of why it is that when you ask, as Dr. Jared Wesley did, what does an Albertan look like? It gets back to Joe, the white guy in the cowboy hat.
Right.
Well, and of course, the reason why, I'm guessing what she wanted to, I mean, I don't know her motives, but I suspect the reason for which she want to claim some type of Indigenous status is then whenever she does something that tramples over their rights, well, why would I trample over their rights? I'm part Indigenous myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
It's unfair. How dare you say that for me? A bit of the Melissa Landsman thing. How dare you say I supported the cause of Nazis and white supremacists and whatnot by posting empty, fake stock photos of pharmacies in Ottawa that were really London, saying that we had like no food or anything. How dare you say that me, a Jewish person, would help? Did you forget you're a lesbian too?
Yeah.
Because they didn't actually invite us over for brunches of brats and beers. But okay, so now we're not supposed to say, we can't say that because there was nobody at the time of World War II that happened to be Jewish who were helpful to the Nazis as well, right? So it's completely impossible because she is Jewish that she would be helping. And how dare you even insinuate that she would? Because we saw you doing it.
Yeah, we saw you doing it.
Well, right. And here's again, it's like, how could you? I could just see like this. Well, how could you dare say that I would dare do something bad to my Indigenous brothers and sisters? I am part Cherokee.
Well, that's what she tried to do, and that's why when APTN came out and was like, actually, you're not.
And even if she was, it doesn't mean that she can do whatever she wants to Indigenous people because she has one drop.
For sure.
Well,
I'm sorry, I can do what I want to you because I'm one of you.
There's for instance, another case of this that happened to me. I got into it with Sue Ann Levy one day.
Yep.
And there was a big back and forth. And she said, you're advocating violence. And I'm like, what are you talking about? She goes, it says right there in your bio. I go, it's chaos, be kind, except for Nazis, punch them. Are you saying I shouldn't punch Nazis? That's advocating violence. I'm like, you support Nazis. I'm a Jewish woman. I wouldn't support Nazis. So why do you have a problem with me wanting to punch the people that don't want you to exist? The mental gymnastics, man.
Well, and then as soon as that was that, and I had to run in with her too, and it was very similar. It's like, oh, I can't believe you're doing this. And at least I have a life. I do something. And I came back. It's like, oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't able to respond because I was actually singing at a choir during a wedding while you were here responding to me, telling me that you had a life.
Yeah.
I'm just, it's sort of like, oh, okay. So now I've got you cornered. You messed with the wrong queen. I served you up. And now all of a sudden, okay, it must be that I don't have a life. That's my cardinal sin now.
That's
okay,
right.
Sue Ann.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is the woman who was fired from the Toronto Sun because she fabricated a story about Muslim refugees sacrificing goats in a hotel. None of that ever took place.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that completely.
Yeah. They were having a mishui right in the hotel,
the
a whole
Western
pit
Standard?
roasting a pig and everything.
No, it was in the Toronto Sun.
Oh, because
Yeah.
we've got a news organization that apparently makes stuff up out here too. So.
Western Standard, yeah.
Okay, kids, we finally have the clip. Thank you, Nate, because it really looks like I would not have found it on my own. But here we go, Mr. Grizzly. And now, kids, you know, I live for the awkward moment. This is a disaster.
Oh yes.
Okay. Just you're gonna thank me for this, kids. All right, so let's make sure the volume's up and let's let it roll.
Thank you, Becca. As you know, there's been a great deal of inaccurate, misleading, and likely defamatory reporting about my discussions with justice officials regarding amnesty for COVID prosecutions. I have been clear that neither I nor anyone within my staff have contacted any Crown prosecutors, as has been alleged. Indeed, Alberta's Crown Prosecution Service has confirmed this to be true. To continue saying or suggesting otherwise is malicious, as this matter is now likely to be subject of legal defamation proceedings. I will not be commenting about it further, as per the advice of counsel on the matter. I'd be happy to take your questions.
Go ahead, Alana.
Just want to clarify. So you're not going to take questions on something, but it's actually questions about something super similar. You're saying this might go before the courts. This, could be legal action, but that's the exact same thing that happened on these phone calls. There was a man who was 3 weeks away from a criminal trial, and you decided to speak with him on the phone. So I wonder if you can explain why you thought that was appropriate.
As I mentioned, this is likely to be the subject of defamation proceedings. I have the ability to seek advice from my justice officials. It's actually part of their job. The advice that I received from my justice officials was that there were several court actions that were taking place, and until they were resolved before the court, no further action could be taken. I follow this advice.
Why are you on a phone call with them?
As I mentioned, the advice that I received from my justice officials was that there were matters that were before the courts, and until those were resolved, there could be no further action, and I took that advice.
But is it appropriate to be on a phone call with them?
As I mentioned, that I do seek a lot of input from a lot of people on a lot of things, and I seek advice from my justice minister. And when I asked his advice, he said that there were matters that were before the court that needed to be resolved, and there could be no further action, and I took his advice.
Did you seek advice from your justice officials prior to speaking with Artur Pawlowski, charged with criminal mischief and breach of the Criminal Intellectual Defense Act?
I have sought my advice from my justice officials on several matters, and the advice that they have given is that there are matters that need to be resolved before the courts. Nothing more can be done until those court cases are decided, and I've taken that advice.
But did you take that advice prior to the phone call?
Alana, you've had 3 questions, and there's a whole room. Just because you don't like the answer she's giving doesn't mean she's not giving.
We've had one answer. We've had one answer.
So we will go to the next. Do you have a follow-up, Marksoff?
Thank you, Becca. As you
Here's
the
thing with the whole defamation thing. So,
likely defamatory.
What's not? Because here's the thing.
Well, the likely court action, and then she says there are several court actions that are taking place. There's not even one yet, is there?
Well, there
He
are
outright lied again.
there are people who are fighting tickets that they got or charges that they got because they violated the health restrictions. But this is where, and Max alluded to this earlier very well,
But
when
not
we're
from her.
talking about the Artur Pawlowski charges, those are not related to any health orders. He is charged with criminal mischief, and he is charged with violating the Critical Infrastructure Defense Act.
Yeah,
That's
the ones
it.
with health orders have been lifted already from him.
Not all of them.
But most of them from him.
Most of them, yes.
Yeah.
But the thing with the defamation piece is, in order for it to be defamatory, it gets complicated, but the short version, to my understanding, is that in order for it to be defamatory, you have to say something that you know is not true.
And you have to know that it's not true, and you have to be saying it maliciously with intent to ruin somebody's character.
Exactly.
So
it's true.
If you're playing another, not the first, not the second, not the third, another recording of Danielle Smith saying, I talked to Crown prosecutors, you're playing a recording of herself saying those things.
Yeah.
So it's not like to say, you pressed play and showed people the things that I said on multiple recordings.
And defamed me in the process.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Like, she has said repeatedly on multiple recordings. She said it when she appeared on The Rebel. She said it when she appeared on the Western Standard. She said it at a press conference, and she said it in this recording that she has spoken to Crown prosecutors. And what's particularly interesting about this 11-minute recording is that she differentiates between speaking to Crown prosecutors and speaking to her justice minister. In that conversation, she displays an awareness that those are two different things. But whenever she gets caught, she turns around and says, oh, no, I meant the other thing. Again, I just said it the same way again.
Should we start urging people to send her flip-flops in the mail as well? Because holy crap.
It's and this is why the whole the ethics commissioner thing is a gift to her. I don't know why. Like, it was such a dumb move for the NDP to send that to the ethics commissioner. And here's the reason why. I'll give it in a nutshell. In Alberta, we have somebody called an ethics commissioner, which is a great sounding title. You hear that title, that person must be in charge of investigating whether or not something's ethical. Absolutely not the case.
Oh.
The ethics commissioner can only act within the confines of the Ethics Act. And the Ethics Act is almost exclusively limited to, but did you make any money? And did you make any money in a very particular order? So, like, if you said to, if I'm an MLA and I said to you, hey, I'll tell you what, if you give me $50,000, then I will build a new something in your area and you'll make money too. That would be a violation of the Ethics Act. But unless you meet those specific criteria and you can prove that there was intent to do so and there was actually a benefit from doing it, then the ethics commissioner can't do boo. And even when the ethics commissioner does find, you might have done a bad thing, she doesn't have any power to do anything. It gets sent to the Speaker of the House, who then makes the decision as to what they're going to do. And wait, who's the Speaker of the House? Oh, right, UCP MLA Nathan Cooper.
So it's a bigger position more than anything else, right?
And this is why, kids, there should be some type of law that makes it illegal for politicians to determine the processes and consequences that regulate their own behavior, because there's an inherent conflict of interest, and all these methods never have any teeth. At the federal level, the maximum fine for a conflict of interest is $500.
That makes me think of
it's basically a permission slip. Is how much will it cost me to do this? That's not a fine. That's how much will it cost me to do this.
Well, it makes me think of the Richard Nixon statement in the David Frost interview. When the president does it, it's not illegal.
Well, to give you an idea of how toothless she is, I'll give you two examples that are really easy, that are directly correlated to our show. So I'm speaking from firsthand knowledge here. A little while back, we filed a complaint with the ethics commissioner because the War Room, the Canadian Energy Center, was advertising a conservative PAC. So they were using taxpayer money to signal boost this conservative PAC and get people to sign up on these surveys and petitions and junk that this conservative PAC was pushing. So one would think if you create a crown corporation that nobody can FOIP or access the information of, and you do it specifically that way, and then that crown corporation is using taxpayer money to collect data for conservative political action groups, that would be a conflict of interest. It's not defined as such in the Ethics Act. And so what we were told, I've got the letter, what we were told by the ethics commissioner was, well, it's kind of, I'm paraphrasing right now, to be clear. It's kind of greasy, but it's up to the voters to decide whether or not they want to tolerate that. The ethics commissioner did an investigation into mask procurement that occurred in the early days of the pandemic because, for inexplicable reasons, a company that existed inside of the education minister's constituency got a not small bid to provide a bunch of masks. Now, this was despite the fact that the province decided that the other way to go was with, well, I think it was Old Navy. And they did this like millions of mask purchase from Old Navy. And then they did a bunch also from this mask company that exists inside of Adriana Lagrange's constituency. The ethics commissioner did a whole investigation on that, but because everybody involved claimed they couldn't remember exactly how they heard about the company or where the brochure came from and what the decision process was, there wasn't enough to do anything.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't that company owned by the PBCC?
That I don't know.
That is something that I did read about some time ago. I'd have to go back. So I'm not saying that's ironclad in that sentence, but I remember reading about that in that one of the largest contracts for mask procurement was by a PBCC-owned company in the province of Alberta. I'd have to double check on that and get back to everybody that watches this program to confirm it. But I do recall reading about that some time ago, which is just a little bit fishy. They were handed this massive contract with absolutely no history of producing this product or procuring it. They were just given something like, I'll say arbitrary figure of $100 million. It might have been less, might have been more. I don't recall exactly the numbers, but it, if memory serves correctly, it was a PBCC-owned company.
They didn't even make the masks in Alberta. Like, that's the kicker, is there were a bunch of Alberta companies that said, hey, we can do this. We can do this at a cost lower than what was being proposed. And instead of using those Alberta-based companies and investing that money into the Alberta economy and creating jobs during a pandemic, and they decided to go with a company that procured the masks from, I'm pretty sure it was Mexico. I'd have to double check, but
I'm guessing there was no consequence for this.
Oh, of course not.
No,
of course.
No.
So you get the money under the guise that you will make them in Alberta and create jobs in Alberta, and then you go do something else, which to me would be fraud.
Yeah, they buy them in Mexico, who are made for a penny and sell it for a pound, you know?
This is why the ethics commissioner was completely the wrong route for the NDP to go, because you take a look at what happened with Casey Madhu. So with Casey Madhu, who was the justice minister, when he decided that he was going to call the Edmonton chief of police to take a look at a speeding ticket that he had gotten, to ostensibly try to make it go away, there was an independent investigator who was a judge, who did a whole investigation, and she actually found, I believe it was a she, that he did try to interfere in the administration of justice. There was a reasonable perception to the public eye that he tried to interfere in the administration of justice. He just wasn't successful, and he wasn't successful because the chief of police was like, yeah, let's not talk about that way because we don't do that.
Okay, so just breaking and entering to the bank is okay so long as you don't make out with any money.
Yeah. I mean, Casey Madhu was removed as justice minister by Jason.
And now he's deputy minister.
But now he's deputy premier.
He suffered so much.
Here, I've got a reference Regis put in the chat. Gerald Chapur has yet to answer any questions regarding his relationship with the PBCC, a cult whose businesses have been on the receiving end of lucrative PPE contracts from Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Ontario, all conservative-led provinces. So click on the link in the chat there that Saucy Seawitch just put in. It'll take you right to the quote. And there is a story as well on Deanblundell.com about that.
Now, Nate, I wanted to ask you something since we were talking about the PPA and the costs for that, and I wanted to sort of come back to the Tylenol thing because there was something on your show that really, really interested me, but I wasn't sure I got all of it. It seems that the price for a bottle of Tylenol, if you're buying it off the shelf, the regular formulation that we're used to, is about $5 to $6, or they were supposed to get the pills for $5 to $6, but they ended up paying 14 or something like that.
Yeah.
And it seems it seems to me that there was some question, I don't know, that because they ultimately had to pay for 14, but is there any possibility that this was one of these things where they were going to, on behalf of this company that's operated, or that Dr. Oz's mother has something to do with it, buying for 5 and then letting them resell for 14, which would make them a very over 100% profit?
Well, what it looks
And that sort of went to pot because then they had to charge more all of a sudden?
Yeah, what it looks one of the theories, like they have not been particularly at all transparent with the
Go figure.
costs of the deal or how the deal was structured. There's a couple of different factors that play in. So one of them is we paid a premium because the company doesn't actually make the drugs that way historically. And in fact, Travis Taves recently said, he's the finance minister. He recently said that the company has said, well, we're never doing this again. So there are no other orders, there are no other customers, and they will not be making this product again, almost as if the shit show has hurt their brand in some way. But the speculation, one of the speculations is because the cost is so high, we don't know what the person who facilitated this deal got paid. So it works out to about $14 per bottle, allegedly. Now, what contributed to that $14 a bottle cost, we don't know. It could be the fact that they had to, we got to do different labels because if we want to put it out to the rest of the country, we need it in English and French. It could be, the childproof caps. It could be there's a middleman who said, well, I'm going to make 50% on this. We don't know, and that information hasn't been provided. What we do know is the cost of the bottle from Atabay is almost double what an equivalent bottle of brand stuff would cost. So,
and they want to manage the pensions, right?
And they want to manage the pensions, and they want to have a provincial police force, and so but this is I think one of the things that needs to be a bigger part of the conversation heading into this election, because if we talk about the Tylenol, that is a perfect example of one of two things. Either, and it can be both, because two things can be true at the same time. Either Danielle Smith is unbelievably incompetent, or Danielle Smith is interested in making sure that people get paid and that money comes out of the taxpayer's pocket.
Right.
And when we take a look at some of the other programs that she's talked about instituting, like Our Star, I think we talked about that last time I was here. Right. There is a pattern of behavior that absolutely emerges. And the one cardinal sin that you can't commit in Alberta politics is to say that you're better than Albertans as a politician. You're above Albertans. And Danielle Smith, the challenge that people are going to have in this next election is Danielle Smith is unbelievably good at being, gosh darn it, just like you.
She's got that Doug Ford, gosh darn.
Oh, yeah.
Gosh, geez, folks.
Yep.
Thing.
Big time. Big time.
Friends, folks.
She's got the radio show, and Max talked about this perfectly, the radio show host mindset, where she's able to take whatever somebody says to her and say, well, yeah, that's an interesting idea. What if we extended it to this? And, thanks so much for bringing that up. I always go back to one of the most inspiring moments in politics, and it comes from the States, unfortunately, but one of the most inspiring moments in politics that I can think of, where you can look at a politician and go, well done, sir. was John McCain when he was running against Barack Obama.
Yes.
And he was asked the question about like, so he wasn't born here in the birth certificate. And McCain turned around and said, you know what? I got a lot of differences with Barack Obama. That's why I'm running. But what you've just said there simply isn't true. And he's an honorable man. We disagree on the direction of the country and how it should get there, but he's an honorable man, and we don't need to lie about stuff like that. And that has been markedly absent in this campaign so far. And apparently I can say that we're in a campaign now, even though the red hasn't been dropped, because Daniel Smith's been saying it all bloody week.
Yeah.
There you go. The other thing about that phone call that is bothersome to me that doesn't seem to be getting enough press. It is getting some press. But it's the fact that it's essentially a laundered call.
Yes.
In the call logs, because the call was arranged by Dennis Modry. In the call logs, if anybody wanted to do a search after the fact, did you ever have a conversation with Arthur Pawlowski? There's actually no logs whatsoever, no record official that she had a conversation with him. Because he arranged the call, she listed, or her staff or somebody had the call listed officially in the logs as a call between her and Modry, and not her and Pawlowski.
Well, that's even assuming that it got on the logs, because the
Assuming
reality
it got
is,
on the logs. Yeah, again, two more reasons. How the hell does she still have a job? Because now you're falsifying official documents. These are government documents. Those documents belong to the people. You're falsifying. If you omit putting those documents that are supposed to be there, so people, for example, historians can go and look back who you talked to, and you doctor those documents.
Maybe, but I mean, the other plausible.
But the documents, if she didn't enter them, or she entered his name when really that's falsification of official public documents.
It's not necessarily, and I'm the last one to defend Danielle Smith, believe you me. If she took that call during office hours and she did so from a government office or using a government phone, then you're correct. One of the things that we know about this government, though, is they realized very early on, hey, people are going to FOIP us and find embarrassing stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, we don't like that. Let's migrate over to other platforms. So
Which is not legal, I'm guessing?
No, it is. It's super unethical, and it's not the standard of practice.
We have no laws against that.
Nope.
Well,
that's something
we should fix.
So it was very, very clearly established like a year and a half ago. Charles Russell did a story where he was able to demonstrate quite clearly that they had moved to programs like WhatsApp and Slack, because that way you didn't get caught. You could say the things that you wanted to say. You could discuss the things that you wanted to discuss off the record. And that is a standard communications practice that now exists. They're very, very good at delineating when am I talking using government resources, when am I talking using my own personal resources. So there's absolutely no reason that Danielle Smith, being the clever thing that she is, wouldn't have said, I'm going to use my personal phone call to have this phone call, and that way it will never show up on any records. That wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. And I think that's one of the reasons why, in that clip, Danielle Smith that you played, Danielle Smith talked about the fact that, you know what? They keep saying that there might have been communication between the Crown Prosecutor's office and my office, but the Crown Prosecutors have said that that's absolutely not true. That's not what was said. What happened was there was a search of email records from government accounts to government accounts.
Right.
That's all.
And you mentioned something interesting about the end date of that search.
Yeah, there's the dates that were included. There could have been a boatload of deleted records that are involved. But even then, everybody who heard the terms of the search, as soon as it became public that the search was going to be from government emails to government emails, everybody who's been paying attention to Alberta politics went, well, what about all the other stuff? Like, if this is somebody who's having a text message conversation, or if somebody who's having a WhatsApp conversation, or somebody who's using a non-government email, if that's all of that would not have been captured. So Danielle Smith proved that the pathway, arguably, because we still have to talk about like the question about the deleted stuff and the time frames absolutely exists, but Danielle Smith demonstrated that for a specific time period, there were no Government of Alberta email accounts used to discuss that. That's all.
Up until December 31st, 2022.
Yeah, that's all.
But the call
happened late January.
Yes.
So again,
how convenient.
But the other piece of it is that CBC has been very, very clear. And I would also point out, we have not seen the Premier's office say, you know what? We got affidavits from every single person in our staff. Every single person who works in the Premier's office or has worked in the Premier's office, because there's been a few folks who have left, by the way. Every single person has signed affidavits saying that they absolutely did not do these things. If they lied on those affidavits, that's criminal. Boy, they wouldn't do that. We haven't seen that happen. That would be the easiest way to make this whole thing go away. And it's been an argument that has been floated publicly, and it's been something that hasn't happened. And that in and of itself is telling. But CBC has said very clearly, hey, we know who these people are. They are protecting the identity of who these people are. There's a difference between anonymous sources and sources that are whose anonymity is being guaranteed. Those are two very different things. And CBC has been quite clear. You know what? The sources that we used, we know who they are. We know what the documents in question are. They would not be continuing to hold this line all the way up the chain in the way they are unless they had credible, verifiable information in front of them. They're not releasing that information because they don't want to destroy these people's lives. But it's there.
Yeah.
There's no defamation suit. There's been a threat. We'll see what happens in 2 weeks, I guess.
Yeah, April 28th, I think, is her deadline or something.
Allegedly. But I wouldn't at all be surprised if, well, you know what, we can't go ahead with the defamation until the ethics commissioner finishes her investigation because we wouldn't want to compromise that, right? That'll take about 6 months, so it's well after the election anyways.
Right. But in the meantime, keep asking questions because you found the spot on the body where it hurts. So press on it. Make her say, ouch. I have two other topics I want to get to. You had a lot of content, but this one really struck, made my ears go, whoop. It's something, now I'm not sure I quite understood it, but basically any local government wanting to accept federal money for some kind of firearm repatriation program must now first get a permit from Tyler Shandro and Danielle Smith before they can do that?
Yeah.
So the party of small government is literally going to create another bureaucracy in order to discourage cities and municipalities for applying for federal money to repatriate firearms.
Yeah.
I'm understanding this correctly.
Yeah. So the game is, to my understanding, the game is the provincial government has already said that they absolutely do not want to have firearms confiscated because, I don't know, right to bear arms or some such nonsense. And let's be clear, and I said this on the show, we can go back and forth. There's some guns that are on there that are questionable, and there's some guns that were on there that are questionable. So by no means is it the perfect bill.
Right.
That being said, the federal government has said these guns are now illegal. They need to be turned in or confiscated. We're going to have this period of time where people can turn it in or not, do what you will. But we don't think that these guns should be available to Canadians, I'll say. Do with that what you will. I personally, I mean, I've done plenty of shooting in my time. And my personal philosophy is, you know, when you start to talk about some of these semi-automatic weapons that are involved, you are absolutely only doing sport shooting at that point. You're not hunting. And any decent hunter will tell you, if you need to fire off more than one shot to drop whatever it is that you're going for, you're a shit hunter. But besides that point, the federal government has said these are the things that these are the guns that we want to see come back. And the provincial government has said, well, we're going to say that if any municipality wants to access federal funds to pay for those programs, which makes sense because if you're going to pull police officers to go to somebody's house and say, hey, we've got it on record that you own this gun. You can't do that anymore. We need the gun. That's taking them away from their regular policing duties unless there's a separate program for that.
Right.
What the provincial government has said, if you want to access the federal funds in order to make that program happen, you have to get a permit from us. And Shandro has candidly said, I don't think anyone should have a permit. So they're adding a layer of, you're exactly right. They're adding a layer of red tape. They're adding a layer of bureaucracy in order to try to defend the guns.
Well, it's the fig leaf thing, right? In theory, you can get a permit to do
Yeah, exactly.
it. No one will ever qualify for one, but in theory, you can.
Yeah. So it's
greasy sneaky. Greasy sneaky, greasy sneaky. Well, again, it's outright lie. If you tell, I once attended. It's going to sound a little far off, but I once attended a session from an administrative tribunal, and the case is that there was an employee of the organization that was entitled to certain benefits, and she kept applying for the benefits, but nobody in HR would do anything when she sent something. Or if she asked for they said, no, you didn't fill it in right. Well, how do I fill it in right? And then they would tell her nothing.
Yeah.
And the case was going to be decided strictly, well, you didn't successfully file it in by the time, so you get no benefits. And I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, okay, I understand that, but just how responsible is the organization? What responsibility or duty does it have to try to make sure that the benefits that they say they have for people can be actually accessed by the people who are eligible to get them?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yep. And when that point finally got made somewhere along the way, it turns out that the three judges of the tribunal basically gave the parties another opportunity to resolve it themselves, because the decision was going to be new law that would make neither side happy, and administrators don't like to use bad cases to make new law.
No.
New precedent. So it seems like, and the lady finally came to an agreement where she got something, but they were really trying to stiff her. And I'm sitting there like this. It's like, okay, yes, you can get this, but and there's a program, and we're spending all this money to create this illusion, I guess, but there really is no program, and you can't access it, and you're going to be spending time and money and resources and whatnot to try and gain access to a program that only exists in theory, because you've created one. But you've also told everybody that's operating it not to lift a freaking finger to help anybody get something from it. How is this not illegal? Again.
Well, I mean, this is a very Kenny move.
It's fraud.
Because this is, we have these levers that we can pull. So we're going to pull them. I don't know that it's in the best interest of the conversation. I don't know it's in the best interest of a future legal case, but I'm not a lawyer. Mm-hmm. But there's no, I don't think that there's any way that you can look at this strategy and not say that it's in terribly bad faith.
Yeah. All right.
You could say that. Yeah.
Yeah, you could say that. And that's being kind.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Some interesting data I picked up today. I was listening to the West Block. Unfortunately, Kathleen Petty is on vacation. I love her. But it seems that the CBC, in conjunction with Janet Brown, who is probably the best independent pollster in Canada and probably the best pollster in Alberta specifically, she did a survey, because we had talked on the previous show that, the rural areas seemed to be pretty much decided, and Edmonton seemed to be pretty much decided, and it was going to be basically Battleground Calgary. So between March 23rd and April 6th, they surveyed 1,000 Calgarians specifically, I guess, in what they call 4 quadrants of the city: the southeast, southwest, northwest, and northeast. They have a margin of error of 3.1%. And they said that the top line number is 47% NDP and 42% UCP. Now, it seems that the NDP only have 3 seats in Calgary right now, so that would be more, of course, and that there are 26 in Calgary. And when they formed the majority government in 2018, they had 15 seats. Current numbers get them to 14, 15, at the maximum 18, but that might not even be enough.
Yeah.
At the moment. When you're looking at the quadrants, there seems to be a north-south divide in the city.
Mm-hmm.
So northwest and northeast strongly lean NDP, with the northeast leaning the strongest. And then in southeast and southwest, the NDP is up basically by 2 points. So it's pretty much a tie. But in the southeast, the UCP is up by 12. So in one neighborhood, in one city, or one quadrant of a city, the UCP is in the lead by 12%. Everywhere else, the NDP is in the lead. In the southwest, just marginally, not even by the margin of error, 2%. The UCP seems to be unpopular in Calgary, but not unpopular enough yet. Now, of course, we're going to have 30-something days of campaign where there are going to be cameras in front of Danielle Smith every single day, and plenty of opportunities for her to screw up, unless she runs a Doug Ford campaign, where she comes up for just 5 minutes, does a whole bunch of things,
her ego will let her.
That's what we hope. And she has that, unfortunately, she has that delivery when she speaks that makes it sound that everything that she is saying is just so incredibly reasonable. I mean, I don't know why anybody would have a problem with this. All we're doing is just this, right? And it's just like, no, I don't, that type thing, right? She always seems
very
so
melodic.
So yeah, very melodic, but always and like she's trying to lull you into like look into. It's like that snake from the Jungle Book, except it's you don't look into her eyes. You just listen to my soothing voice, and everything that sounds like batshit crazy what I'm saying will just vanish. Just listen to my voice. So I get what like. I had not noticed that until you pointed it out in the last show, that she's very good at making people feel like the most important, feel heard, and that's. So I get that. I see where it is she could be dangerous, because if you actually spend some time to listen to what she says, it makes no sense. But like you said, if it's how you make me feel, she's really good at that. So I'm looking at this, and Janet Brown speaks specifically of what she calls orphan voters, and she thinks that this is where it's going to where it's going to the battle is really going to be. So she says that she basically asks people who are not saying that they're going to vote NDP or UCP if they would vote for another party or not vote at all. And there's about 6% that say that they're thinking of voting for another party, and about 11% that are truly, truly, truly undivided. And when she digs down, she says of that 11% that are truly undivided, it either splits the same way as the other voters, or those people don't vote. Now, if those are orphan voters that would normally vote UCP, and for Rachel Notchley, a vote that doesn't show up is just as good as a vote that flips, this is not necessarily bad data. What's at the end of this here? But what is your sense of the likelihood of people either voting for the UCP while holding their nose because they're signing up for 4 years of BS, or because they've had 4 years under Notley and they have some time since to evaluate how it was, the how do you like me now?
Yeah, I think this is
like this because I think that I'm just trying to see that I'm thinking that the smartest thing Rachel Notley did was to stay, right? Because that creates now a real dynamic of two parties that you can go back and forth, not just one that's inevitable. But it seems to depend on the people that either they're just too tired or don't want any more of that hot mess expressed, so they won't vote for her, Danielle Smith, or be inclined to vote NDP to switch. What's your sense of what are the things that could happen over the next few weeks before the campaign actually officially starts that could lead people to say, you know what, yeah, Danielle, I'm out?
Well, I think that a lot of those things are already happening. I think that the wild card, and I mean, Janet and all of the people who are talking about those polls are being very, very clear. You know, it's a snapshot in time, dynamic situation. But I think that we saw today one of the big pieces that is potentially going to be a big influencer in this election come out, and that's when I was talking about the fact that the ex-deputy premier Thomas Lukasik is now not just endorsing the NDP, he's openly campaigning for them. This does a couple of different things potentially that I think could be very interesting and very influential. One of those things is it gives permission for other PC people, whether they were MLAs or ministers or what have you, to come out of the shadows and say, you know what, Thomas is right. This Franken party that the UCP has turned into is not representative of the conservative values that led Alberta for 44 years and got us to where we are. That opens the door for that in a really, really big way. It also creates a pathway that could potentially give permission to, if there's, we'll use South Calgary as an example. There's a lot of old school. There's no shortage of nursing homes in South Calgary, is all I'm saying. But there's a lot of old school conservatives who will say, I'm voting conservative because that's what we do. And when you have higher profile people like Thomas Lukasik coming up and saying, Danielle Smith is so bad that I not only will not be supporting a conservative party, I'm actually working for the NDP. I'm working to get the NDP elected because they're the best choice for the province. That starts to create a window for some cognitive dissonance, and it starts to create a window for some of those people to say, you know what, I really like that Thomas. He was such a handsome boy. If he's going this way, well, maybe we should listen. That, and I'm not saying it's going to be that way for all of those stretch the imagination, but
but we're talking margins now.
And that could create enough cognitive dissonance, especially if more names start to come out. I wouldn't be at all surprised if they did. That could create enough cognitive dissonance that maybe moves some votes, but certainly drives some people to stay home. Because when you have people who were the vanguards of the conservative movement in Alberta coming out and saying, this ain't that. A lot of people have been saying it for a long time. But when the high profile people, when the people who defined those governments come out and start saying that stuff, that is not without consequence. So I think that's really got my attention in a big way, because that's an extraordinarily powerful narrative. It remains to be seen whether or not the NDP crap the bed with it, but boy, there's some very real potential there. I think that one of the other things that you're going to see as we go throughout the campaign is that people are going to get more informed. There's the folks like us who pay attention to politics 24/7, and there's varying degrees of engagement that go on there. But when you talk to the average Calgarian, the average Albertan, how closely are you paying attention to politics these days? It's not that close at all. COVID changed some of that, but the average person, they got groceries to buy. They don't want to deal with this, especially given that it's such a dramatic goat show. That will start to change as the writ gets dropped, and depending on how well people are communicating their message, and depending on how well other people communicate just how deranged Danielle Smith's pattern of behavior has been, and that's a very deliberate use of that word, by the way, that's where you're going to start to see some movement. I think if the NDP keep their heads down, they stay on message, they don't have any bozo eruptions, I think the UCP are going to continue to have bozo eruptions. I think that there's, right now, the last polling data that I saw from one of the bigger polling sites in Canada has 43 and 44 seats, I think it is. Yeah, 87. So 43 and 44, a difference of 1 seat. And that is scary to think of for sure, but it also represents a shift from what it was 2 months ago. 2 months ago, the UCP they had a slightly more, I can't even use the word commanding lead, but they had a little bit of a lead. That lead is eroding.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen anything to suggest that the UCP are doing anything meaningful that is going to stop the bleeding or stop that erosion. And I think that if the NDP continue to stay on message the way that they have, and I think if they can start to try to speak a little bit more Calgarian, or at least keep the people who can't off of the radar, because they got some candidates down here. I've spoken to a couple people who are heavily involved in politics, and they got some candidates down here, and everybody's going like, how the hell did that happen? But I think that if they're able to do that, then there's a lot of latitude. Like, I would not at all be surprised as this campaign period continues. I'm not going to get tired of doing that. I think we're going to see more and more evolution. I think that this is going to be one of the most dynamic elections that we've seen in this province in a very long time, if not the most dynamic in this province's history. In 2019, everybody knew the UCP was going to win.
Mm-hmm.
In 2015, nobody was expecting the NDP to win.
Right.
In 2023, everybody's going, what's going to happen, man? And then
welcome to the rest of Canada, Alberta. Yeah, this is how politics happen usually.
Well, but you got to remember, we had a 44-year dynasty with
exactly.
And
I know
this is new to us, and it's disorienting.
An actual two-party system, at least.
Well, yeah.
Well, you see one of the comments here from PNC Bio, and he says, the Alberta NDP is to the right of the federal Liberals. I don't understand how it's such a hard choice. I completely agree with that. The Alberta NDP is more in line with the former federal Progressive Conservative Party than the current federal Liberal Party.
Right.
The NDP in Alberta is not what you would consider far left, or far right, far left, sorry. They're
no, not at all. And in fact, there's plenty of leftists here in Alberta who are super unhappy with the NDP right now because they want the NDP to be the far left party, and they're not.
There's no market for it, though.
There's not in Alberta. You're right. There's no market for it in Alberta. They really are to the right of the federal Liberals. And I've said that for a long time. And a lot of people go, how could you say that? And I go, well, it's
look at the platform.
It's not difficult to understand. If you look at the platform, look at what they're saying, I'm like, they are to the right of the federal Liberals. You can't go hard left in Alberta and expect to win a seat anywhere.
It's one of the only NDP parties, if not the only one, that actually supports the building of a pipeline to Tidewater.
Yep.
Hello. To the right. One last question before you go, because I know you have to hop off, and it's time for us as well. You were talking, I don't remember his name, that guy from the NDP who's campaigning.
Oh, Thomas Lukasik. He's not from the NDP. He's just
NDP. Oh, sorry. Yeah, Lukasik. Yeah. What do you think are the odds that a Travis Taze or Sonia Savage could pull up Mike Myers and they're not really dead and come back and say a little something at some point during the campaign to help push Danielle a bit over the cliff? Do you think it would be, because I know they both didn't leave just for personal reasons at the last minute.
No.
So they probably don't want another 4 years with her. They're probably not saying anything right now, but if they see the thing starting to snowball down, what do you think are the odds that they may come up and actually give her an extra little push?
I don't think we'll see it publicly from either of them. I think that Travis Taves, he was making it clear even during the leadership race that if he didn't win, he was not making any big commitments about staying in. He's a rancher. He's profoundly religious. and he's rural Alberta. And I don't think like the thing that people keep not understanding about rural Alberta is that you have to be a part of your community, because when there's 6 feet of snow and your truck's stuck, or it's your combine's in the mud or what have you, you have a very limited pool of people that you can pull from. This is one of the reasons why the spread of misinformation and disinformation has been so effective in rural Alberta, because everybody trusts the people that they're with, as a sweeping generalization. So I don't see Taves stepping out. If I was going to pick a name to say, oh, this could be interesting, the name that I think might be fascinating starts with a K and ends with an N-y.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I forgot he could come back because he already tried to do her in on Alberta sovereignty a couple of times.
Yep. And I think that he is principled enough that he will not get in the way of the government doing the business of the day. But my personal political fantasy is that at some point down the road, somebody's going to get Jason Kenney on the phone, and they're going to get a quote from him saying that the UCP is not the party that he built. The inmates have taken over the asylum, and he is deeply concerned for the province of Alberta. He doesn't have to endorse the NDP. He doesn't have to do anything like that. But I think that when you're talking about somebody who's as politically savvy as Kenney, if I was going to put out a long game for the province of Alberta under conservatism, then I would want to see maybe the Conservatives, maybe we need to get rid of these radicals. Maybe losing an election is a really effective way to do that. Maybe the Conservative Party can rebuild itself out of its ashes and reclaim its 44-year dynasty. Maybe that's the best thing for the long-term future of Alberta.
Sometime in the sin bin does people good now and then.
And we've seen Lisa Young has said, she wrote a column where she explicitly said to Conservatives who are saying, what do we do? The answer was, y'all need to sit this one out, because the bottom line is, if the UCP, and I've said this before, and I'll make this my last comment, but if the UCP win with anything other than a stunning majority, there is a very real, well, Smith will be gone, no question. But the other problem that they're going to have to navigate is, if we're looking at a difference of 5 seats, and Take Back Alberta has been successful at getting 10 candidates, those 10 candidates now own the government.
They're going to have the same problem as the GOP.
Yep. Well,
but
even bigger, because
because proportionally it's a bigger share of the caucus.
Right.
That doesn't even matter.
But 10 out of 43 is more than 10 or 7 out of 300 and something, right?
Doesn't matter, because here's how the game works. If I have 5 Take Back Alberta MLAs, and Take Back Alberta says, you know what I want? We want to have, on Tuesdays, it's Taco Tuesday across the province. Period. End of sentence. It's going to be Taco Tuesday. This is the Take Back Alberta platform. Obviously, I'm being ridiculous to make an example. Take Back Alberta caucus, let's call them, goes to the UCP and says, hey, you guys, it's got to be Taco Tuesdays in Alberta, and it needs to be branded Take Back Alberta Taco Tuesdays. We want to have signs. We want to have lights. We're hiring Nickelback every Tuesday. It's going to be fantastic. If the UCP leader or the caucus says, that's fucking crazy, we're not going to do it, those 5 Take Back Alberta MLAs, their next response is, oh, but you're going to, otherwise we're going to sit as independents and you're going to lose your government.
Yeah. Oh boy.
We look forward to our tacos. It only takes the difference of how many MLAs does it take to give the NDP a majority.
I know what I'm having for dinner
together. You couldn't keep your party together, and it was so bad that we had to go sit as independents. We're going to make you so the bad guy in this situation unless you give us every little thing that you want. That's what the real danger of this election is to me.
Beholden.
Yeah.
To the 2%.
Yeah.
That made the difference between her and Taze.
Exactly.
Ugh. Yeah. That does not make me
There's a
happy.
happy thought to leave everybody with. By the way,
Please.
we're doing a show tomorrow night at 8 Mountain Standard Time.
And I'm going to leave you something that makes you I've heard you said makes you happy. I wanted to show this when I saw it, and then we never got to put it in, and I had completely forgotten about it until Nate mentioned it on his show the other day. But Mr. Grizzly, if you would please, this is a beautiful moment. Of course, our framing is a little weird, but I think you'll get the gist. This is the Mayor of Calgary, Jody Gondek, sorry.
There's no sound.
There's no sound. Why is it doing that? And of course, this doesn't reverse, right? Okay, we'll try that again. I'll let it cycle through. We'll try that again. I am so sorry. I wanted to leave you with a happy moment there.
That's cool. If you ever want to really, really leave me with a happy moment, there's a clip that Jason Markusoff from the CBC got when he was doing a year-end interview with Danielle Smith. You can find it very easily, and he asks Danielle Smith, "How's your bullshit detector?" And Danielle Smith goes, "Well, I think, I'm pretty trusting." And she does like the second nod that I haven't been able to replicate yet, but it's just so perfect. So that clip is just, I was playing at the end of our shows for I think 3 months before I had to delete it to make space on the
okay, I finally got it at the right spot. So let's do this.
Question for Mayor Gondek, Kean with the counter signal. Just a few months ago, a handful of months ago, you were fighting tooth and nail against increasing the police budget, and you were actively supporting defund the police rhetoric. I'm just wondering, when you realized the police forces were not optional, did it take this random stabbings, wives getting stabbed, police officers getting killed, to realize that it was important to fund police departments? And how can Calgarians trust you when you flip-flop on basic issues like public safety?
Every freaking time. That should be standard operating procedure. That's very Indigenous.
Well, here's the thing.
The only way that could have been more Indigenous, and she's not Indigenous, but the only way it could have been more Indigenous if she just stood there and just turned her back.
Yeah.
That's not the first time that's happened either. Everybody's running around saying that it's unprecedented that someone would do that to Kean Bexty. But if you take a look at what happened surrounding the federal debates, there was more than one federal leader. There's a great clip of the bloc leaders saying I'm not going to answer your question because you're garbage. I'm just not going to talk to you, man.
Yeah.
And that is, I personally believe that is what more, when somebody has demonstrated themselves to be a bad, not just not a great journalist.
Well, the question.
But when they're asking, it was a totally bad faith question. When they're demonstrating themselves to be somebody who is not there in the interest of journalism, they're not there in the interest of advancing a conversation. When they are there purely to serve an agenda, and they're doing so in the worst faith way possible, more politicians need to be saying, yeah, you know what? No. You don't get to have this conversation.
Well, that's why they wouldn't grant him credentials in the last during the last election cycle. They're like, no. Same thing with Rebel News. Rebel News, they were not granted journalistic credentials because they're not journalists. They're not.
But they did sue, and they got access to the debates. And what was the other media platform that they sued with?
True North.
No way.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Why? Why would they help that?
Because True North is that.
True North helped them. Sorry.
Yeah,
okay. No. I thought I heard Mr. Really say journalists, so I thought the actual press pool helped.
True North.
What the hell?
True North.
Yep.
Well, of course they would.
And then they created their own press gallery because they didn't like the press gallery that exists at the federal level. But that's a whole other conversation for another day. And I gotta, I'm getting looks, so I gotta go.
Right. All right, Nate. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
If you need to bow up, please go ahead. We'll close off. Well, kids, that's the end of this episode of the True North Eager Beaver Alberta pre-election special podcasts. This is our second one. We'll hopefully have one or two more before the date of the election, with hopefully a results show on election night, which will be May 29th. So there won't be one. We try to do them at least 2 weeks apart. So don't expect one next weekend, but maybe the weekend after.
Well, next week we're busy anyway, so.
Yes, we're doing the pub.
Exactly.
Yes. Oh, I love the pub. Yes. So we hope you love listening to us because we love making this for you. And kids, the reaction to our interview yesterday with Charles Adler. Wow. We are floored. We knew we had a good feeling we had something special when we had recorded it. But your reactions and the things you've had to say to us already, right? It's literally we're at
Not
24 hours now, I think now.
Yeah,
Like
just
24 hours
now.
just over. Yeah. It's been incredible. So thank you very much. And there's some people that said some extremely touching things. And yeah, the love, that's amazing. And the fact that you have gotten so much out of that and that you've gotten some hope or some inspiration, that's why we do this.
Yes, exactly.
That's why we do this. So when you react that way, this makes it all worthwhile. And, the hours that we put into this makes it not feel like work at all. So thank you. Thank you for the gift of your attention. Thank you for the gift of your praise. Thank you for the gift of your compliments. Thank you for the gift of retweeting, all of that. It means the world to us. Thank you very much. And thank you to Kit Rebecca, who did, even though we didn't ask for any on that episode, who did send us a tip anyway. So thank you. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. For this one, we will be asking for them though. Remember, sharing is caring. Word of mouth is priceless, so let your peeps know about us because democracy is something that you do, particularly if you live in Alberta. Well, number one, plan your vote.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Number two, plan to bring one, maybe two people with you, preferably people who didn't vote last time.
Just get out and vote, man.
Get out and vote, man. But pay attention. Pay attention because this one is a very, very critical election for Alberta because, as Nate said, right, this is the time where you have to make some very, very critical decisions of where it is that you are going to position yourself for the economies of the future.
Oh, yeah.
And this is the time that this is the critical moment where you do need to make to reflect on that choice before you make it. Because there could be some huge lost opportunity costs down the road. If you like this podcast, you can find us on the Crier Media Network, as well as all Beaver Grizzly friendly platforms. Stars and reviews are greatly, greatly appreciated, and thank you for your generosity with them. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We love to hear from you, so reach us on our Facebook page, True North Eager Beaver on Facebook, our Twitter feed at True Eager on Twitter, or by email, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com. You could subscribe to us via our pod page, podpage.com/the True North Eager Beaver, all in lowercase letters with a hyphen between each one of those words, and we'll come straight to you as soon as we have something fresh off the bandwidth. And if you happen to be watching on our digital platform, our True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated YouTube channel, for example, well, if you could follow the advice that Kit Elaine typically gives, smash that button. And if you would also like to subscribe, well, that would also help us out a lot. And, well, you'll earn our undying and eternal loyalty. So thank you very much.
Should be right there.
Pardon?
Should be right there, I think.
Should be right there. All right. We can't do this without you.
Far.
It's
way
on
over there.
Way over there. Okay.
Those are the my screw up. My screw up.
Very slimming though, isn't it?
You might like that, but I'm like, no, I need to put a few pounds on. I got to bulk up and beef up for the summer beach weather. Got to look good in the Speedo, man. Got to look good in the Speedo.
The Speedo. Such happy memories. We can't do this without you or your kind and generous support. So if you feel that we've done a particularly good show today, if you found it informative, if you learned stuff, yes, retweet it, tell your friends. But, well, Would you look?
Coffee's empty.
Empty cup. Our staff disappeared again.
I've got no coffee, no beer, no whiskey, no wine.
Keeping our staff in line is like herding cats, I swear.
I'm telling you, I had orange pico tea this morning because I'm out of coffee. And that ain't the same. Look, I like a cup of tea at 3 p.m. First thing in the morning, it's just not enough for me. And I like a cup of tea. I'll tell you when a cup of tea is great first thing in the morning, if I'm on vacation and I don't have to go or be anywhere because it's just a casual leisure I need coffee to get started in the morning, and I'm all out. So, you
got Kid Saucy going. It sounds like a country song. My dog ran away and my girl left me, and the worst thing is my cup is empty.
Remember when you play a country song backwards, you get your dog back, your truck back, your wife back, your job back.
Your reputation back. Don't give a damn about my bad reputation.
What was it McLean and McLean sang? Taking the O out of country.
Oh, that's bad.
I didn't say anything bad. I didn't say anything bad. I did not say a bad word.
I love myself some of that country music without the O.
If you take the O out of country, you got yourself a whole different kettle of fish right there.
Yes, please scan the QR code. This time it's right next to my head, not Mr. Grizzly's, because we've changed the configuration today. And if you happen to be, pardon?
I can swap
it.
it.
There you go. There we go. Now things are back to normal. Right there. Yes. If you can scan that, if you're watching, that would be great. And if you are listening, then our fund, our emergency hot chocolate, Guinness, Caesar, coffee, Farm Boy gluten-free chocolate chip ice cream cookie sandwiches fund is coffee, ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver. That's ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, all in one word and lowercase letters. Oh, people are talking about tea. Yes, people like Earl Grey. I love myself some Lady Grey, actually. There actually is a Lady Grey tea.
Well, I like Earl Grey and English breakfast. Those are my preferences, but I have decaf Earl Grey. I'm not drinking it. Sorry. I'm not drinking it.
All right.
It doesn't taste right.
It doesn't taste right. Merch, we're still working on it, Kit, so please keep your powder dry.
Coming.
And I'm saying, from the Beaver Lodge, this is your Eager Beaver. And until next time, Kits, it can be a tough world out there, so please be kind to and gentle with yourselves. Mr. Grizzly, do you have some words of wisdom?
Yeah, I've been thinking about what to say at the end of this episode, and I wanted to go somewhere with, we should vote and we should show gratitude, but really, I'm still kind of on an emotional high from the interview with Mr. Adler, and take heed to what he says. We live in an incredible country, and we're very privileged and lucky to live here. We have issues. We're working on them. We're going to try and make it better. And part of our mandate in this milieu, this medium, this job that we do is to keep people informed with the truth.
Mm-hmm.
But because we are so lucky to live here, we need to remember, and this is the motto that you've applied to this company, this corporation. Democracy is something you do.
Mm-hmm.
So remember to get out and vote when you're in Alberta, because this country is worth saving. And in the words of Pierre Elliott Trudeau, Canada is a dream. Don't let the dream die. And we have to work to keep the dream alive. So don't stop dreaming.
There you go. And for me, when it comes to Alberta specifically, you have a premier and candidate who has decided that the citizens of our province do not deserve to know what she has in store for them, don't deserve answers, definitely don't deserve honesty.
Mm-hmm.
And probably shouldn't even expect basic ethics, as in not taking a call from a criminal defendant to try and intervene in his case and then not have it properly recorded in any way, or have it done on a personal time so it couldn't be recorded. We try to get our kids to believe that they're not all the same. And they are not all the same. But the ones that are particularly odiferous is the word I would use in this case. They're insulting your intelligence. They think you are stupid.
Yes.
And they are treating you like you're stupid. And they have everybody else screaming and yelling. But nobody is sitting there and telling them, hey, I don't know if you noticed, but I'm not the one who's treating you like you're stupid. Pay attention to what people are telling you. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it useful? Is it something positive about them or something negative about someone else? If it's negative about someone else, is it negative about people you associate with? Do you have any gay people in your family? Any trans people in your circle of friends or acquaintances?
Co-workers.
Muslims.
Yeah.
Jewish people. People with disabilities. People who don't have a high standard of living. All the people they talk down about, are any of them in your circle?
Pretty much one of them would be somewhere, right? It's impossible to not.
So you have a choice in this election to vote just for you and what will work out for you, or you have a chance to put a vote, not only for yourself, but all those you care about. If someone is talking about someone in your circle in a manner that is debasing, devaluing, dehumanizing, don't vote for them.
Simple as that, right?
Don't. Anybody who says lib with that second syllable, that makes it clear that they have absolutely no respect for Canadian citizens that have mental disabilities. They're not going to respect you.
No.
If they can talk that way about fellow citizens, they are talking that way about you behind your back. Don't vote for them.
They don't care about you. They care about two things. What do I always say? The two things they care about.
The big P
Power
and the big N.
And money. That's it. They care nothing else about nothing else. Power and money.
Don't give them their candy. All right, kids. Before we go, Mr. Grizzly, something to brighten your mood?
Oh, yes?
Yes, on the visual.
I'll just pull this right up here. Hopefully it cues up. Yes. Yeah, there we go.
Yes.
That's how you treat fascists.
Okay. The mayor of Calgary didn't take the question, walked away. This nurse, be these people.
Yes.
These are the people you want to be.
Now, let's see how this looks when I roll this. I have no idea what it's going to look like.
I know. Yeah, it's going to be weird on that. Yeah, that frame. We're going to see. Yeah.
Let's see what happens.
Mr. Grizzly, roll the credits and let's see what happens. You are listening to.
Yeah, that's not working at all.
That's not working at all. We're not. So will you add it in the audio for the
I will add it in the audio. Yeah, I'll correct it. I'll cut this section out for the audio podcast. I'll put the proper start in the audio and the proper end in the audio. This is the live stream, and I screwed up I didn't know that once you start, I didn't mean to start it in portrait mode.
Yeah.
It was just my phone turned on me when I hit go, and it flipped, and I didn't know you couldn't change it once the stream started.
Yeah.
You can't. You'd have to stop and restart. So here we are. Hey, we had a good show either way.
Hey, I get to do this,
and if you were watching this on your phone, you didn't have to tilt it sideways. So I guess
I get to do this though.
Oh,
yeah, you have to look up.
Can you fill my mug or fill my cup? Can you pour
the Beaver Bunch? The Beaver Bunch. That's the way we became the Beaver Bunch. All right, kids. You know what? Have a great rest of the weekend. Please tell your friends about your shows. And on Monday, because you know I love to tease, I have some very, very interesting personal news for you that you will very much enjoy.
I don't even know what it is. He's keeping me in the dark too. I have no idea.
I have not told anyone. And if you understand, if you know me, it's not that I'm terrible with secrets. If it's an actual secret and I'm not supposed to tell it, that's fine. But if I have some good news that's just mine, like if I buy you a birthday present or a Christmas present, I can't do Christmas shopping like 1 month and a half because you'll already have your present and I'll have to go buy you another one. So I'm terrible at keeping really good news.
If you tell me Monday morning you won the $47 million in the draw last night, I'm going to kill you for it, okay? Because I got no beer, dude.
But if I did, you'd have plenty later.
I know. It's the weekend, bro. It's the weekend.
I know it's the weekend. But think of it. It's just one weekend. And then there'll be the whole rest of your life with beer if I had it.
I suppose so, yeah, okay. All right, we'll see you.
You passed the marshmallow test. Bye, everyone.